There is a room, bathed in the cool, blue glow of a screen. A person sits within it, yet their mind is 1,000 other places. It is in the endless stream of emails, the cascade of news alerts, the silent, demanding notifications from a life lived online. The room is full of things, possessions gathered over years, each one once a promise of happiness, now a silent testament to a cluttered reality. There is a weight in this room, a pressure that cannot be seen, but is felt in the tightness of the chest, in the shallow rhythm of breath. This is the paradox of our time, to be more connected than ever, yet to feel profoundly alone, to own more than any generation before us, yet to feel an inner poverty, a persistent, hollow ache. This feeling, this quiet desperation, is not a personal failure. It is the hum of the modern world, a sickness of the age. We have been taught, from our very first day, to pursue, to strive, to achieve, to accumulate more success, more followers, more experiences, more things. We are told that happiness lies just beyond the next purchase, the next promotion, the next goal. So we run faster and faster on a treadmill that has no finish line. We were given a manual on how to acquire, but no one ever taught us how to release. And so we carry everything. We carry the weight of our ambitions, the ghosts of our regrets, the anxieties for a future that never arrives. We are drowning, not in a lack of things, but in an abundance of them. We are trapped, not by walls of stone, but by the invisible cages of our own attachments. But there is another way. There is an ancient wisdom, a path that was carved thousands of years ago by those who saw this human condition with perfect clarity. It is not a doctrine that asks for your belief, nor a religion that demands your conversion. It is a practice, a method of looking inward, of examining the very nature of our suffering and discovering the mechanics of our own freedom. It is a path that suggests the cure for our frantic holding on is the gentle, radical act of letting go. It is the way of non-attachment, the wisdom of Zen. This journey is not about abandoning the world or renouncing our lives. It is about finding freedom within the life we already have. It is about learning to put down the unnecessary weight we carry so that we may finally walk with a lighter step and breathe with a deeper sense of peace. To begin to understand this path, we must first become aware of the weight we carry. Imagine a student walking beside their teacher along a dusty path. The teacher stops and wordlessly picks up a stone from the ground. It is a simple rock, smooth from the river, heavy enough to feel substantial in the palm. The teacher hands it to the student and says, "Carry this. Do not put it down." The student accepts, and at first, the task is nothing. The rock has a pleasant weight, a solid reality. They walk for an hour, and the arm begins to feel a dull strain. The student shifts the rock from one hand to the other. After 2 hours, the strain turns into a persistent ache, radiating from the fingers, through the wrist, up into the shoulder. The mind, which was once free to observe the trees and the sky, is now consumed by the rock, its weight, its texture, its unyielding presence. After half a day, the arm is trembling. The muscles are locked in a silent scream of protest. The student's entire world has shrunk to this single object of torment. They look at the teacher, their face a mask of exhaustion and confusion. "Master," they plead, "I cannot carry this any longer. The weight is unbearable." The teacher looks at the student with compassion and says softly, "The rock is not heavy. You are simply choosing to carry it." And in that moment, the student understands. They open their hand. and the rock falls to the earth with a quiet thud. The relief is immediate, a wave of release that is almost euphoric. The pain was not in the rock itself. The pain was in the clinging. That rock is not merely a stone in an old story. It is the silent weight you feel in your own heart. It is the anxiety you carry into sleep each night, and the first thought that greets you upon waking. In the language of this ancient path, this clinging is called upadana. It is a word that means grasping, or clinging, or attachment, and it is the hidden source of so much of our dis-ease. We think of attachment as something simple, a desire for a new car, or a bigger house, but its roots go much, much deeper. It is a fundamental activity of the untrained mind. We carry these rocks in so many forms, often without even realizing we have picked them up. We carry the rock of material possessions. The things we own end up owning us. We surround ourselves with objects, believing they will build a fortress of security and happiness around us. But each possession becomes a new source of worry. The fear of it breaking, the fear of it being stolen, the anxiety of it becoming outdated, and more profoundly, the temporary pleasure of acquiring something new quickly fades, leaving behind a subtle hunger for the next thing and the next. We are convinced that happiness is in the having, but we are left only with the anxiety of holding and the fear of losing. The more we accumulate on the outside, the more we can feel a strange emptiness on the inside, as if the space for true contentment has been filled with clutter. We carry the heavy rock of our identity. We cling to our job titles, our roles as a parent or a partner, our reputation in the community. We build a story of who we are, a carefully constructed image, and we spend immense energy defending it. We crave praise because it validates this story. We fear criticism because it threatens to shatter the fragile image. This attachment to a fixed self makes us rigid, brittle. We become so identified with the mask, we forget the face beneath. We live in a state of performance rather than presence, constantly managing perceptions, terrified that someone will discover we are not the person we pretend to be. We forget that our true nature is not a static noun, but a fluid verb, a process of becoming that is constantly in motion. We carry the sharp-edged rock of our opinions and beliefs. We hold on to our views, political, social, or personal, as if they were extensions of our own body. When our beliefs are challenged, we feel as if we are being personally attacked. Our conversations become battlefields, not meeting grounds. Our purpose becomes to be right, not to understand. We are like a person trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter we squeeze our certainty, the more the truth, in its fluid complexity, slips through our fingers. Peace of mind cannot coexist with a mind that is at war with every idea that contradicts its own. This attachment to being right creates a world of division, of us versus them, and we become prisoners in a jail of our own making. And perhaps most subtly, we carry the rock of our relationships. We cling to others, not always out of pure love, but out of need. We need them to complete us, to make us feel worthy, to act in the way we expect them to. We project our hopes and our needs onto them, and then we suffer when they, being human, inevitably change and act according to their own nature. This is not love, it is a contract. And when the other person breaks the unwritten terms of our contract, we feel betrayed and hurt. True love allows for freedom. Attachment demands conformity. It smothers the very person we claim to care about, turning the relationship from a dance into a grip. And when the relationship ends or changes, the pain we feel is the pain of our own grasping hand being pried open. Finally, In a strange paradox, we even carry the familiar rock of our own suffering. We become attached to our stories of pain, our past traumas, our grievances. Our identity can become so intertwined with our victimhood that we don't know who we would be without it. The pain, while agonizing, is known. It is a reliable companion. The idea of letting it go, of being free from it, can be terrifying because it means stepping into the unknown. And so we replay the old hurts. We nurture the old angers. We keep the wounds open. Because the rock of our sorrow has been with us for so long, we have mistaken it for a part of ourselves. This is the nature of the weight we carry. But why does it cause us so much pain? The answer lies in a fundamental law of the universe. Everything changes. This is the teaching of anicca, or impermanence. The cells in your body are right now, in this moment, dying and being replaced. The thoughts that fill your mind appear and disappear like clouds in the sky. The seasons turn, mountains erode, stars are born and die. The person you were 10 years ago does not exist. The person you will be in 10 years has not yet been born. The entire universe is a single, vast, interconnected river of change. Nothing is solid. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is separate. And attachment, our desperate clinging, is the act of standing in the middle of this flowing river and demanding that it stop. It is a futile argument with reality itself. The friction between our demand for permanence and the universe's absolute law of impermanence is what we experience as suffering. In the Buddhist language, this is dukkha. It is not a punishment from a higher power. It is a self-inflicted wound. It is the natural, predictable consequence of trying to hold on to that which cannot be held. The rock in the story did not have to be a source of pain. It was just a rock. The suffering came from the instruction, from the attachment, from the refusal to let go. The solution, the master revealed, was so simple it was almost insulting. Just open your hand. So the first step on this path is not to judge yourself for the weights you carry. It is simply to notice them. Without criticism, without panic, can you begin to feel the presence of these rocks in your own life? Can you notice the tension in your shoulders when you think about your job? The knot in your stomach when you read the news? The ache in your heart from a past regret? You do not need to throw the rocks away just yet. For now, the practice is simply to acknowledge their weight, to see them for what they are, not as essential parts of you, but as temporary burdens you have picked up along the way. Once we have truly felt this weight, once we have acknowledged the pain of our own clinging, a profound question naturally arises. If carrying these rocks causes so much pain, why do we pick them up in the first place? Why does our own mind, in its search for happiness, lead us to cling so tightly to the very things that guarantee our suffering? To answer this, we must look deeper into the very nature of the mind itself. We have felt the profound weight of the rocks we carry, the attachments that cause us so much pain. And this leads to the most practical of questions. Why? Why do we reach for these burdens in the first place? If our deepest desire is for peace and happiness, why does our own mind seem to sabotage us, leading us again and again to grasp the very things that hurt us? The answer, according to the wisdom of Zen, lies not in some external flaw, but in the very nature of our own untrained consciousness. For centuries, Buddhist teachers have used a powerful and playful image to describe this state of mind. They call it the monkey mind. Imagine a restless monkey in a vast forest of trees. It never stays still for more than a moment. It screeches and chatters, and with a burst of frantic energy, it swings from one branch to the next. One branch is a memory from childhood. Before it can settle, it leaps to another branch, a worry about a bill that is due next week. From there, It jumps to a fantasy about a future vacation, then swings to a rehearsed argument with a loved one, then scrambles to a branch of self-criticism over a mistake made yesterday. It is a constant, exhausting, and seemingly endless motion. This is not a metaphor for a mind in crisis. This is the baseline activity of the normal, everyday, untrained human mind. It is a relentless flurry of thought, pulling us from the past to the future, from judgment to desire, from fear to fantasy, rarely, if ever, allowing us to rest in the one place we ever truly exist, the present moment. This monkey mind is more than just a random generator of thoughts. It is a master storyteller. It is a powerful, creative force that takes the raw data of our experience and instantly weaves it into a narrative. And it is this narrative, not reality itself, that we react to. For example, you walk past a colleague at work and they do not smile or say hello. That is the simple, neutral fact. But the monkey mind does not leave it there. Instantly, it begins to write a story. The branch it leaps to is labeled, "They are angry with me." Then it jumps to the next. "I must have said something wrong in that meeting." Then to another, "No one here respects me." And another, "I am going to lose my job." Within seconds, a neutral event has been transformed into a full-blown catastrophe, a drama in which you are the unfortunate star, and your body reacts accordingly. Your heart rate increases, your stomach tightens, your mind fills with defensive postures and anxious plans. You are no longer reacting to a person who simply didn't see you. You are reacting to a movie, a fictional story, projected by your own mind onto the screen of the present moment. This is the mechanism that convinces us to pick up the rocks. The mind tells us a story that if we just acquire that one more thing, we will be secure. It tells us a story that our self-worth depends on the approval of others. It tells us a story that our rigid opinions are the only thing protecting us from a chaotic world. The monkey chatters incessantly, convincing us that our safety and happiness depend on clinging, on grasping, on holding on for dear life. It operates from a place of fear, a deep-seated anxiety about the unpredictable nature of life. Its constant motion is an attempt to control, to predict, to manage reality. But this is a fool's errand. It is like trying to nail a shadow to the floor. The result is not control. The result is exhaustion. The result is suffering. Now, the most important teaching about the monkey mind is this: it is not your enemy. This is where so many spiritual paths become a struggle, a war against oneself. We hear about this chattering monkey, and our immediate instinct is to want to silence it, to cage it, to kill it. We sit to meditate and are horrified by the chaos we discover, and we think we are failing. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Fighting your mind is like trying to wrestle with a ghost. You will always lose. The Zen approach is not one of aggression, but of friendship. The monkey mind is not a malevolent force. It is simply an untrained mind doing what an untrained mind does. It is like a wild horse, full of incredible energy and power, that has never been shown a gentle hand, or like a young puppy, chewing on the furniture and running in circles, not out of malice, but out of an abundance of undisciplined vitality. To beat the puppy would be cruel and ineffective. Instead, you must patiently, gently, and consistently teach it to sit. You make friends with it. So how do we make friends with this wild mind? We begin with the simple, profound act of observation. We introduce the practice of mindfulness, or sati. This is nothing more mysterious than paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. We don't try to stop the thoughts. We simply notice them. We become the watcher, sitting quietly by the side of the road, observing the traffic of our own mind passing by. A thought of anger comes, and we don't jump into the car and drive away with it. We simply note, anger. A thought of sadness comes, and we don't drown in it. We note, sadness. We create a space between our awareness and the thoughts themselves. In this space is freedom. In this space, we realize we are not the monkey. We are the one who is watching the monkey. The primary tool for this practice is the breath. The breath is always with us, and it is always in the present moment. It becomes our anchor. When we notice the monkey has swung away to a branch of worry, we don't scold ourselves. We gently, kindly guide our attention back to the simple physical sensation of the breath entering and leaving the body, in and out. This may happen 5 times in a minute, or 500 times. It doesn't matter. The practice is not in staying with the breath perfectly. The practice is in the gentle act of returning, over and over and over again. Each return is a moment of training, a moment of strengthening the muscle of awareness. There is a beautiful parable for this process. Imagine your mind is a deep lake. For years, the winds of life, the storms of emotion, and the currents of constant thinking have stirred this lake until the water is completely brown and murky with mud. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot even see an inch below the surface. Your first instinct, the instinct of the untrained mind, is to jump into the lake, to flail your arms and legs, to try and force the mud to settle. But what happens? You only stir it up more. The water becomes even murkier. You become exhausted and frustrated. The wisdom of Zen suggests a different approach. It suggests you get out of the lake, sit quietly on the shore, and simply allow the water to be. Do nothing. Just watch. And as you sit in stillness, without your interference, a natural process begins. The heaviest particles of mud, of their own accord, begin to gently drift downwards. Slowly, slowly, the water begins to clear. It is not that you have emptied the lake of its mud. The mud is still there, but it has settled. And now, for the first time, the water is transparent. You can see the fish swimming. You can see the plants on the lake bed. You can see the rocks and the sand. You haven't eliminated anything. You have simply allowed the mind to come to its natural state of rest and clarity. This is the goal. Not an empty mind, but a clear mind. When the water of the mind settles, we stop reacting to the murky projections of our own fears and stories. We begin to see things, both within ourselves and in the world, as they truly are. And when we can sit quietly and look deep into this clear water of our own consciousness, a profound truth begins to reveal itself. We begin to notice the very nature of the lake bed itself, the ground of our being, and we see that everything we once thought was solid, separate and permanent is in fact part of a constant, gentle, undeniable flow. We see that the water itself is never static. It is always moving, always changing. And this brings us to the next great truth on our path, the universal river of impermanence. As the mud settles in the lake of the mind, as the waters become clear, we begin to see the very texture of reality itself. We look deeply, past the reflections on the surface, and we notice something profound. Everything moves, everything flows. There is nothing static, nothing fixed, in the entire landscape of our experience. This is the first great insight, born from a quiet mind, the direct perception of a universal law, known in the ancient Pali language as anicca, impermanence. It is not a philosophy to be debated, but a reality to be observed. It is the silent, rhythmic pulse of the cosmos. We see it in the grand sweep of time, in the birth and death of stars, in the slow, patient grinding of mountains into dust. We see it in the turning of the seasons, the confident green of summer giving way to the brilliant surrender of autumn, followed by the deep stillness of winter and the inevitable promise of spring. The world is not a collection of solid, separate objects. It is a single, vast, interconnected dance of a rising and passing away. This dance is not only outside of us, it is within us. Your body, which feels so solid, so real, is a river of change. Millions of cells are dying and being born in this very moment. The breath that just filled your lungs is now gone, replaced by another and another. The person you were a decade ago exists only as a memory, a collection of fading photographs and stories. The thoughts and feelings that seem so powerful and all-consuming appear for a time and then dissolve like clouds in the sky. Joy arises, crests like a wave, and gently subsides. Sadness comes, washes over us, and eventually recedes. Nothing lasts. This is not a tragic flaw in the design of the universe. It is the design itself. There is perhaps no story that illustrates this truth more powerfully than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman whose life was shattered by the death of her only child. Consumed by a grief so absolute she could not accept its reality, she clutched the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered from house to house, desperately seeking a medicine that could bring her son back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man, seeing her unbearable pain, directed her to the Buddha. He told her, "Only he has the medicine you seek." Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha and laid her child at his feet, pleading for the miracle that would restore his life. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion. He did not dismiss her plea. Instead, he said to her, "There is only one thing you need to find for the medicine to work. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed. But it must come from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." A surge of hope filled Kisa Gotami's heart. A single mustard seed, that was all. It seemed so easy. She began her journey, going from door to door. At the first house, she asked for the seed, and the family was happy to give it to her. But when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" the woman replied, "The living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our father just last year." Kisa Gotami left the mustard seed and went to the next house. There too, they had a seed to spare, but they mourned the loss of a beloved daughter. She went to a third house and a fourth, and on through the entire village. The story was always the same. Every family had a seed to give, and every family had a story of loss to share. One had lost a husband, another, a sister, another, a grandparent. There was not a single home, not one, that had been untouched by death. As the sun began to set, Kisa Gotami sat by the side of the road, the truth of her journey slowly dawning on her. She had not found the mustard seed, but she had found the medicine. She realized that her own sorrow, which had felt so singular and isolating, was in fact the shared sorrow of all humanity. Death was not a unique curse visited upon her son. It was a universal condition of being born. In that moment of profound realization, her frantic, desperate clinging began to soften. She understood. She returned not to the Buddha, but to the forest, and laid her child down to rest. She had walked into the village as a mother consumed by a personal tragedy. She walked out of it as a woman awakened to a universal truth. Kisa Gotami's initial suffering was not simply caused by her loss. It was caused by her fierce, desperate refusal to accept the reality of that loss. Her pain was the friction generated by her will, rubbing against the unchangeable law of the universe. This is the very heart of the matter. We suffer, not because things change, but because we expect them not to. We build our lives as if we are constructing a house of stone on solid ground, when in fact we are building a raft on a flowing river. We want the people we love to stay with us forever, unchanged. We want our moments of happiness to be frozen in time. We want our health and youth to be permanent fixtures. We want to build a dam to hold back the river of time, to create a private lake where nothing ever changes. But the river cannot be stopped. Its nature is to flow. And our exhausting, heartbreaking struggle against this current is the very definition of our suffering. To accept impermanence is not to become passive or pessimistic or morbid. It is the very opposite. It is the secret to living fully. When you know that the flower in your hand will soon wilt, you can appreciate its color, its fragrance, its delicate form with a poignant intensity that you could not if you believed it would last forever. When you understand that every moment is fleeting, you learn to inhabit the present moment with your whole being. You listen more deeply. You love more completely. You taste your food more fully. You stop postponing your life for a future that is not guaranteed. The acceptance of impermanence infuses life with a preciousness and a vibrancy that the illusion of permanence can never offer. The practice, then, is to learn how to flow with the river. It is to become a skilled navigator of the current rather than a frantic builder of dams. This means learning to observe the arising and passing of our own thoughts and feelings without grasping or resisting. When a wave of joy comes, we ride it with gratitude, knowing it will not last. When a wave of sadness comes, we allow it to wash over us, knowing that it too will pass. We find our stability not in holding on, but in our ability to balance in the midst of motion. Every breath becomes a miniature lesson in impermanence. The in-breath arises, it is here, and then it is gone. The out-breath arises, it is here, and then it is gone. It is a continuous, gentle practice of receiving and letting go. As we become more attuned to this universal flow, a new question begins to surface in the quiet clarity of our mind. We can see that the world around us is a river. We can feel that our thoughts, our feelings, and our body are also part of this river. But what about the observer? What about the I who is watching all of this change? Is this self a solid, unchanging rock on the riverbank, witnessing the flow from a fixed position? Or is that I, that sense of self we hold so dear, also a part of the water, a temporary eddy in the ever-moving stream? To answer this, we must look even deeper into the water to confront the most radical and liberating teaching of all. We have journeyed along the river of impermanence, seeing how everything in the world, and even within our own bodies and minds, is in a constant state of flux. Nothing holds still. This leads us to the most intimate and perhaps most challenging inquiry of all. We have seen that the landscape is constantly changing. But what of the one who sees the landscape? What is this I that sits behind the eyes, that feels the joy and the sorrow, that witnesses the ceaseless flow of thought and sensation? Is this self a solid, unchanging entity, a permanent rock on the riverbank, watching the water of life rush by? Or is it, too, part of the river? The search for this solid self is one of the oldest human quests. We instinctively feel its presence. We say, I am happy, I am angry, I think, I want. We assume there is a consistent, continuous I who is the owner of these experiences. the thinker of these thoughts. But the wisdom of Zen invites us to do something very simple, yet very radical. It asks us to look, to gently, patiently investigate our own direct experience and find this self. Where is it? Is it your body? But your body is changing in every moment. The cells that compose it today are not the same ones that composed it 7 years ago. Is your body you, or just something you have? Is the self your mind? But which mind? The happy mind of yesterday, or the anxious mind of this morning? Your thoughts are a fleeting parade, appearing and disappearing without your command. Are you your thoughts, or are you the space in which they appear? Is the self your memories? But memories are notoriously unreliable. They fade. They change with each telling. Are you your job? Your relationships? Your name? These are all temporary roles and labels. This investigation is like peeling an onion. We peel back the first layer, the physical body, and we don't find a core self there. We peel back the next layer, our fleeting feelings, and we don't find it there. We peel back the layers of our thoughts, our perceptions, our memories, our stories, one by one, looking for the solid essence at the center. But when we get to the very end, after every layer has been removed, what we find is nothing. There is no core. The onion was only ever the sum of its layers. In the same way, the Buddha taught that what we call the self is not a solid, independent entity. It is a temporary process, a convenient name we give to the coming together of 5 ever-changing elements. These are known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. The first is form. This is the physical world, our body, everything we can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. It is impermanent, a river of matter. The second is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise when our senses make contact with the world. They are categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This too is a constant, flickering stream, changing with every new input. The third is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes and labels our experience. It sees a shape and a color and says, "That is a red car." It feels a sensation and says, "That is sadness." It is a process of identification, not a solid thing. The fourth is mental formations. This is the most dynamic category. It includes all of our habits, our intentions, our biases, our beliefs, our desires, our aversions, our mental chatter. It is the activity of the monkey mind itself, a whirlwind of mental events. Clearly, this churning process is not a stable, solid self. The fifth is consciousness. This is the raw capacity of awareness itself, the light that illuminates the other 4. But even this is not a solid, independent thing. Eye consciousness arises in dependence on the eye and a visible object. Ear consciousness arises in dependence on the ear and a sound. It is a flickering process, not a permanent soul. What we call I is simply the temporary confluence of these 5 flowing rivers. It is a pattern, a process, not a permanent entity. The word wave is a useful label for a specific movement of water, but a wave has no separate existence from the ocean. When the conditions are right, it arises. When the conditions change, it subsides back into the whole. So it is with the self. This teaching, known as anatta, or no self, is not a statement of nihilism that you do not exist. It is a statement of profound interconnectedness. It says, you do not exist as a separate, isolated island. You exist as a wave in the ocean of being. The freedom in this realization is beautifully captured in a famous Zen story. A man is meditating in his small boat on a vast, misty lake. He has his eyes closed, enjoying the deep stillness. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashes into his. His peace is shattered. Instantly, anger flares up inside him. He opens his eyes, ready to shout at the careless person who has disturbed his meditation. But as he looks, he sees that the other boat is empty. It had simply come loose from its moorings and was drifting with the current. In the moment he sees the boat is empty, his anger vanishes completely. It dissolves into the mist. The crash was the same. The disturbance was the same. The only thing that had changed was the presence of a someone to blame. The anger could only exist when there was an I who felt offended and a you who was the offender. When one of those was seen to be an illusion, the anger had nowhere to stand. The profound lesson of the story is this: the other boat is always empty. And even more profoundly, our boat is empty too. So much of our daily suffering is born from this illusion of a solid self. We feel hurt because our ego, our idea of me, feels slighted. We feel anxious because this me feels threatened. We feel jealous because this me feels it is lacking something that another me possesses. We spend our lives polishing, defending, and promoting this fragile, fictional self. It is an exhausting, full-time job, and it is the root of our sense of separation, our loneliness, our fear. The teaching of no self is not a command to destroy the ego. It is an invitation to see through it. And seeing through it does not lead to annihilation. It leads to liberation. It is the end of the exhausting job of self-defense. When you are no longer a fixed target, you can no longer be hit. When you are no longer a fragile vase, you can no longer be broken. The wave does not fear dissolving, because it knows its true nature is the entire ocean. Letting go of the small, constricted, separate self allows us to experience our true nature, which is vast, open, and interconnected with all of life. The rigid walls of the ego dissolve, and we become flexible, resilient, and porous. Compassion arises naturally because the line between self and other becomes blurry. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. So we have journeyed into the heart of our condition. We have felt the weight of the rocks of attachment. We have witnessed the chattering monkey mind that compels us to pick them up. We have floated on the river of impermanence that makes all clinging futile. And now, we have looked for the clinger itself, the solid self, only to find it to be an empty boat, a temporary pattern in a flowing stream. We have, in essence, completed the diagnosis. We have looked with unflinching, compassionate honesty at the nature of our dis-ease. Now, with this clarity, we are ready to turn our attention from the diagnosis to the prescription. Having understood the problem so intimately, we are ready to receive the clear, practical, and liberating map that was offered for the journey out of suffering. We are ready to explore the foundational framework of this entire path to freedom, the Four Noble Truths. We have now journeyed deep into the landscape of our own minds. We have felt the ache of the rocks we carry. We have witnessed the frantic activity of the monkey mind, and we have seen through the illusion of a solid, separate self, realizing that all of life is an interconnected, impermanent flow. This process has been an intimate and honest diagnosis of our condition. It has been a courageous act of looking directly at the nature of our own dis-ease. Now, having done this essential work, we are ready to receive the counsel of the great physician. After his own awakening, the Buddha's very first teaching was not a complex metaphysical theory, but a clear, pragmatic, and profoundly practical framework for healing. It is the cornerstone of the entire path, a map so elegant and complete that it has guided seekers for over 2.5 millennia. This is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. They are not commandments to be believed, but truths to be realized for oneself, presented with the simple, empirical logic of a doctor addressing a patient. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. This Pali word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and encompassing. It is not a pessimistic declaration that life is only misery. Rather, it is a courageous and compassionate acknowledgement that in our unawakened state, there is a fundamental quality of dissatisfaction, of friction, of things being slightly out of joint. It is like a wheel that is not perfectly centered on its axle, producing a constant, subtle wobble with every turn. Of course, dukkha includes the obvious forms of suffering, the pain of sickness, the sorrow of loss, the frustration of old age, the anguish of death. But it also points to more subtle forms. It is the stress that comes from getting what you want and then worrying about losing it. It is the disappointment that comes from not getting what you want. It is the vague, restless anxiety of a mind that can never be truly content, always seeking the next pleasure, the next distraction. It is the exhaustion of holding on in a world where everything is changing. The first truth is simply the physician's initial statement. There is an illness. Let us be honest and courageous enough to admit it, to look at it, and to understand its symptoms without flinching. It is a truth that validates our experience, telling us that the unease we feel is not a personal failure, but a fundamental part of the human condition that has been recognized and understood for ages. The second noble truth is the truth of samudaya, the origin or the cause of dukkha. This is perhaps the most empowering truth of all, because it states that our suffering is not random, it is not meaningless, and it is not inflicted upon us by some external force. It has a specific, identifiable cause, and that cause, the Buddha said, is craving or clinging. The Pali word is tanha, which literally translates as thirst. It is a deep, instinctual thirst for things to be other than they are. This thirst takes three primary forms. First, there is the craving for sense pleasures, the thirst for delicious tastes, beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, and agreeable feelings. We chase after these experiences, believing they will bring lasting happiness. Second, there is the craving for existence, the deep desire for the ego to continue, to become something, to be important, to leave a mark. It is the thirst that fuels our ambition, our pride, and our defense of the self. Third, there is the craving for non-existence, the thirst to get rid of unpleasant experiences. It is the aversion to pain, to criticism, to discomfort, to difficult emotions. It is the desire to annihilate anything that threatens the comfort of the ego. This truth points directly back to our previous explorations. It is the monkey mind's constant reaching for pleasure and pushing away of pain that creates the friction of dukkha. This is the physician's diagnosis. We have found the source of the illness. It is not mysterious. It is caused by this specific agent, this constant grasping and aversion. This is a moment of profound hope. If our condition has a cause, then it is no longer a hopeless fate. It is a solvable problem. The third noble truth is the truth of nirodha, the cessation or the end of dukkha. This is the physician's hopeful prognosis. It follows with perfect logic from the second truth. If suffering arises from a cause, then by removing that cause, the suffering will cease. If the friction of dukkha is created by the fires of craving, then when those fires are extinguished, the friction vanishes. This is a radical and liberating declaration. It states that a state of profound peace, freedom, and unshakable well-being is possible for every human being. This state is called nirvana. The word literally means to extinguish or to blow out. It is not a heaven that one goes to after death. It is a reality that can be experienced in this very life. It is the blowing out of the flames of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the end of the frantic thirst, the end of the internal war. It is the mind returning to its natural state of luminous clarity and boundless compassion. The third truth is the physician looking us in the eye and saying with complete confidence, "This condition is curable. There is a way out. A complete and lasting recovery is possible." The fourth noble truth is the truth of Magga, the path that leads to the end of suffering. Having identified the illness, diagnosed its cause, and confirmed a hopeful prognosis, the great physician now gives us the prescription. He hands us the medicine. This medicine is not a single pill or a simple belief, but a comprehensive and practical guide for living. It is the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is a set of 8 interconnected factors that, when cultivated together, systematically dismantle the causes of suffering and lead directly to the freedom of nirvana. It is a design for living, a middle way that avoids the extremes of harsh asceticism and mindless indulgence. These 8 factors are often grouped into 3 categories. First is wisdom, which includes right view and right intention. Second is ethical conduct, which includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And third is mental discipline, which includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the how-to manual for the entire journey. It is not a linear path where you perfect one step before moving to the next. Rather, they are like the strands of a rope. They are cultivated simultaneously, each one supporting and strengthening the others. The 4 noble truths, taken together, form a complete and perfect map. They tell us where we are, how we got here, where we can go, and exactly how to get there. They transform the problem of human suffering from a confusing, existential tragedy into a practical, solvable challenge. They place the key to our own liberation directly into our own hands. In the sections that follow, we will begin to unpack this profound prescription. We will explore each of the 8 paths in detail, not as abstract philosophical concepts, but as practical tools we can apply to the challenges of our modern lives. The entire journey of healing begins, as it must, with the very first step on the path, the foundation upon which all else is built. It begins, not with doing, but with seeing. It begins with cultivating a clear and honest perspective. It begins with right view. We stand now at the head of a path, a prescription in our hands for the healing of our deepest ailments. This is the Noble Eightfold Path, the comprehensive guide for living that was offered as the cure for our disease. And it is here that we must pay the closest attention, for the very first step on this path is not an action, not a command, not a ritual. The first step is a look. Before we can walk in the right direction, we must first be pointing in the right direction. Before we can navigate the terrain of our lives, we must first have an accurate map. This foundational step, this map, this guiding light for the entire journey, is called Sama Ditthi in the ancient tongue, or right view. It is the most critical element of the path, for it is the lens through which we will see all the other steps. If our view is distorted, clouded, or simply wrong, then every action we take, no matter how well-intentioned, will lead us further astray. Right view is the practice of cleaning the lens of perception, so that we may, for the first time, see things not as we wish they were, or fear they are, or have been told they are, but simply as they are. To understand the profound importance of right view, we must first fully appreciate the condition of wrong view, which is the default state for most of us. There is an ancient and enduring story that illustrates this condition with perfect, compassionate clarity. It is the story of the blind men and the elephant. A king brings an elephant into his courtyard and invites a group of men, blind from birth, to experience it. He asks them, "What is an elephant?" The first man, who touches the elephant's thick, sturdy leg, declares with absolute confidence, "An elephant is a pillar, like the column of a temple." The second man, who gets a hold of the tail, disagrees completely. "No, you are wrong," he says. "An elephant is like a rope, coarse and frayed at the end." A third man, who touches the smooth, sharp tusk, scoffs at them both. "How can you be so foolish? An elephant is a spear, hard and dangerous." A fourth, touching the broad, massive side of the animal, proclaims, "You are all mistaken. An elephant is a great wall." And so it went, each man touching a different part, and each one becoming utterly convinced that his partial, limited experience was the entire, absolute truth. Soon, their discussion turned into a heated argument, and the argument into a brawl, each man defending his own fragment of reality, unable to conceive that the others could have any valid experience at all. This story is not about foolish men in a distant land. It is a story about us. Each of us, blinded by the limitations of our own conditioning and perception, grasps one small part of reality and mistakes it for the whole. We are the man touching the leg, convinced that reality is only what is solid and material. This is the wrong view of materialism, the belief that happiness and security can be found in physical possessions and status. We build our lives around these pillars, only to find them cold and unsatisfying, unable to support the deeper needs of the heart. We are the man touching the tail, convinced that life is just a random, meaningless series of events, a frayed rope leading nowhere. This is the wrong view of nihilism, a bleak and cynical perspective that drains the world of its magic and our lives of their purpose, ignoring the intricate web of connection and meaning that surrounds us. We are the man at the tusk, believing that our ideas, our religion, our political tribe is the one and only truth, sharp and solid, and to be defended at all costs. This is the wrong view of dogmatism, a rigid and aggressive stance that turns the quest for truth into a war against others, creating endless conflict and suffering. And we are the man touching the side of the elephant, feeling a vast, impenetrable wall. This is the wrong view of a separate, solid self. We feel ourselves to be this isolated entity, this wall standing apart from the rest of the world, and from this illusion of separation arises all our loneliness, fear, and defensive anxiety. The defining characteristic of all these wrong views, all these blind men, is an absolute certainty based on incomplete information. This is the fundamental error of the untrained mind. It latches onto a fragment, solidifies it into a belief, and then spends its life defending that belief against all other fragments, creating a world of argument, division, and sorrow. What then is right view? Is it simply another, better opinion about the elephant? Right view is not grabbing another part of the elephant, say the ear, and declaring, "An elephant is a fan." That would just be to become another one of the blind men. Right view is the ability to see the whole elephant. It is the sudden, illuminating insight that all the partial views, the pillar the rope, the spear, the wall are simultaneously true and untrue. They are true as partial descriptions, but untrue as complete explanations. Right view is the understanding that holds all the contradictions in a vast, compassionate embrace. It is the king's view, who sees the whole animal and understands why each blind man has come to his particular conclusion. To cultivate right view, then, is to cultivate the ability to see the totality of our reality, to see the interconnections that weave all the separate parts into a living, breathing whole. Specifically, in the context of our path, right view means seeing the world through the lens of the fundamental truths we have already begun to uncover. Firstly, it is the clear seeing of impermanence, of anicca. It is to understand that the elephant is not a static statue made of stone. It is a living, breathing organism, constantly changing, eating, breathing, moving. To see this is to let go of our demand for life to be fixed and predictable. Secondly, it is the clear seeing of no self, of anatta. It is to realize that the elephant has no essential elephant-ness that exists independently of its parts. It is a process, a temporary collection of legs, a trunk, a heart, a mind, all working in concert. There is no central CEO in the elephant. To see this is to begin to let go of our own rigid and defensive ego, our own belief in a solid, separate self. Thirdly, and most fundamentally, right view is the direct understanding of the Four Noble Truths. It is to see, in our own lives, the reality of dukkha, the arguments of the blind men, to identify its cause in our clinging to partial views, to realize the possibility of its cessation, the peace that comes from seeing the whole, and to recognize the path to that cessation. And finally, at its deepest level, right view is the insight into what is called dependent origination. This is simply the understanding that nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence on other things. The elephant exists because of the air it breathes, the food it eats, the ground it stands on, the parents that gave it life. Its existence is dependent on a vast web of conditions. In the same way, the suffering of the blind men arises dependently. It arises because of a physical touch, which gives rise to a perception, which gives rise to a feeling of certainty, which gives rise to a thought, which gives rise to clinging, which gives rise to a statement, which gives rise to an argument. Seeing this web of cause and effect dissolves the illusion that things just happen randomly, or that we are isolated victims. It reveals a universe that is an intricate, logical, and deeply interconnected process. This might sound like a complex intellectual exercise, but it is crucial to understand that right view is not merely a philosophical position you adopt. It is not something you simply believe. It is a practice. It is a lens that must be polished and actively looked through, moment by moment. So how does one cultivate this clear sight? The tradition speaks of a threefold process. The first step is what we are doing right now. It is called the wisdom born of listening or learning. It is hearing the teachings. It is like the blind men being told by the king, the thing you are touching is an elephant, a great and complex creature with many different parts. This gives us the initial framework, the map. We hear about impermanence, no self, and the Four Noble Truths. This stage gives us a working hypothesis, a new possibility to consider. The second step is the wisdom born of contemplation or reflection. This is taking the map you have been given and thinking about it deeply. Does it make sense? The blind men might huddle together and compare their experiences. You felt a pillar, and I felt a rope. Perhaps they are connected. We reflect on the teachings in the context of our own lives. We observe the world around us and see the truth of impermanence everywhere. We look at our own defensiveness and see the pain caused by the illusion of a solid self. We think, we ponder, we question, we allow our intellect to grapple with these ideas until they move from being foreign concepts to plausible truths. This step integrates the teachings into our understanding. But the third step is the most vital. It is the wisdom born of direct experience, or meditation. This is what transforms the plausible truth into a lived reality. This is the step where the blind men, through some miracle, gain their sight. They no longer have to theorize or argue. They can see the elephant directly for themselves. For us, this direct seeing happens through the practice of mindfulness. When we sit quietly and watch our own breath, we are not just thinking about impermanence. We are feeling its rhythm directly in our own bodies. When we observe our thoughts arising and passing away without a central thinker commanding them, we are not just contemplating no self, we are experiencing it. This direct, non-conceptual knowing is what truly heals. It moves right view from the head to the heart. It is the difference between reading a menu and eating the food. The power of right view as the first step cannot be overstated. It is the foundation that determines the quality of the entire structure. If your view of the world is that it is a hostile battlefield of competing egos, the brawl of the blind men, then your intentions, your speech, and your actions will naturally be defensive, aggressive, and harmful. Your efforts will be spent on winning, on proving you are right, on protecting your small piece of turf. But if your view begins to shift, if you start to see the world as an interconnected, selfless, and ever-changing dance, then your entire being begins to reorient itself. When you see the whole elephant, your intention is no longer to fight with the other blind men. Your intention might become to help them understand, to share your expanded perspective. When your view is rooted in the understanding of impermanence and no self, your speech naturally becomes kinder, your actions more compassionate, your livelihood less harmful. You cannot have right action without right view, because your actions are always a product of how you see the world. It is like tuning an instrument before a performance. Without right view, every other step on the path will be out of tune, creating a discordant and unsatisfying life. But when the instrument of your perception is tuned to reality, the potential to create a life of harmony, wisdom, and profound peace becomes possible. When this clear lens is polished, even just a little, we begin to see the world and our place in it with new eyes. We see that our suffering is not a personal failure, but an impersonal process born of misunderstanding. We see that others are not our enemies, but fellow beings, also blind in their own ways, also grasping their own small part of the truth. This dawning clarity, this shift from a narrow, contracted view to an open, expansive one, naturally begins to change our motivation. The heart, guided by this new and clarifying light, begins to turn away from the path of fear and self-interest and orient itself toward the path of wisdom and compassion. This fundamental reorientation of our will, this alignment of our deepest intentions with our clearest seeing, is the next beautiful and essential step on our journey. It is the practice of right intention. With the clarifying lens of right view, we begin to see the landscape of our lives with new eyes. We see the interconnectedness, the impermanence, the very mechanics of our own suffering and its potential end. But a map, no matter how accurate, and a lens, no matter how clear, are not enough to complete a journey. A choice must be made. A direction must be set. Having seen correctly, we must now choose where to point our hearts. This conscious act of orienting our will of aligning our inner energy with our newfound wisdom is the second step on the path. It is called samma sankappa, or right intention. If right view is the eye that sees the destination, right intention is the hand on the rudder of the ship, steering us away from the familiar, rocky shores of greed, hatred, and delusion, and toward the vast, open ocean of liberation. Intention is the subtle yet powerful energy that precedes every action and every word. It is the quality of the thought, the motivation behind the desire. It is the why that animates the what. Two people can perform the exact same action, but the intention behind it changes everything. One person might offer a gift out of a genuine wish to bring joy, while another might offer the same gift to create a sense of obligation or to show off their generosity. The outward act is identical, but the inner worlds and the karmic seeds being planted are universes apart. Right intention, therefore, is not about policing every single thought that flits through our mind-san impossible task. It is about consciously cultivating and nourishing the wholesome intentions, the thoughts that lead toward peace and freedom, while gently recognizing and letting go of the unwholesome ones that lead back into confusion and suffering. The teachings break right intention down into three beautiful and practical facets. The first is the intention of renunciation. In our modern world, the word renunciation can sound harsh, suggesting a life of grim deprivation. But in this context, its meaning is closer to letting go or surrender. It is the wise and compassionate intention to free ourselves from the prison of craving. Its opposite is the intention of greed, the constant, restless thought of, what can I get? How can I have more? This is the default setting of our consumer culture, the belief that happiness lies in the next purchase, the next experience, the next validation. The intention of renunciation is born from the right view of impermanence. It sees the futility and exhaustion of chasing fleeting pleasures. It understands that true contentment does not come from adding more, but from needing less. It is the intention of simplicity. It is the conscious choice to find joy in what is, rather than perpetually seeking what is not. It is looking at a desire as it arises in the mind and, instead of automatically feeding it, gently asking, will this truly lead to lasting peace? Or will it just plant the seed for more wanting? It is the intention to unburden ourselves, to let go of the rocks of excessive desire so that we can walk with lightness and ease. The second facet is the intention of harmlessness, or avihimsa. This is the firm and gentle resolution to cause no harm to any living being, including ourselves. Its opposite is the intention of ill will, anger, and cruelty, thoughts of hatred, resentment, and revenge that are so toxic to the mind. The intention of harmlessness flows directly from the right view of interconnectedness. When we see that we are not separate islands, but waves in the same ocean, the desire to harm another becomes a desire to harm ourselves. It makes no sense. This intention is not merely passive. It's not just about refraining from physical violence. It is an active commitment to gentleness in our thoughts. It means that when someone insults us or acts unfairly, we make the conscious intention not to water the seed of hatred in our heart. We recognize the anger as it arises. We acknowledge its fiery energy, but we choose not to feed it with stories of blame and retaliation. It is the intention to meet the world's aggression, not with more aggression, but with a firm and compassionate boundary of non-harm. This includes being harmless toward ourselves. It means letting go of the inner critic, the cruel voice of self-judgment that so often torments us. It is the intention to treat ourselves with the same kindness and patience we would offer to a dear friend. The third facet is the intention of goodwill, or abhyapada. This is the beautiful counterpart to harmlessness. While harmlessness is the intention to not cause pain, goodwill is the active intention to bring happiness and well-being. It is the radiant, heartfelt wish for all beings to be safe, to be healthy, to be peaceful, to be free. It is the practice of what is called metta, or loving kindness. Its opposite is indifference, cynicism, or conditional love, the states of mind that are closed off and contracted. The intention of goodwill is an expansive, open-hearted state. It is the intention to look upon a stranger, a friend, an animal, and even someone we find difficult, and silently wish them well. It is not about forcing ourselves to like everyone. It is about recognizing that, just like us, every being wants to be happy and to avoid suffering. Right intention is the practice of aligning our heart with this universal desire. It is a radical act of generosity that asks for nothing in return. It softens the hard edges of the ego and dissolves the illusion of us and them. It is the simple, powerful intention to be a force for warmth and kindness in the world, starting with the quiet landscape of our own mind. There is a wise and simple story that perfectly captures the practice of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, "Inside of me, there is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is anger, envy, greed, arrogance, resentment, and ego. The other wolf is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, and compassion." The grandchild thinks about this for a moment and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" The old man replies simply, "The one I feed." This is the very essence of right intention. Our mind is this inner ground where the two wolves are constantly circling. The thoughts of ill will, craving, and ego are the first wolf. The thoughts of kindness, letting go, and compassion are the second. We cannot stop the first wolf from being there. It is a part of our conditioned nature, but we have a choice. We have the power to decide which wolf we will feed. Every moment we spend lost in a fantasy of revenge, we are feeding the wolf of anger. Every moment we indulge in comparing ourselves to others and feeling inadequate, we are feeding the wolf of envy. But every time we consciously choose to forgive a hurt, we are feeding the wolf of peace. Every time we generate a genuine wish for another's happiness, we are feeding the wolf of love. The practice of right intention is the moment-to-moment choice of which wolf to nourish with our attention. It is not about a war to kill the bad wolf, which would only create more violence. It is the gentle, persistent, and conscious act of turning away from the bad wolf and offering our food, our energy, our life force to the good wolf. Over time, the one that is fed grows strong, and the one that is starved grows weak. This inner cultivation is the most important work we can do, for intention is the seed of karma. Every word we speak and every action we take first begins as a tiny, silent intention in the mind. A seed of ill will, if watered and fed, will eventually sprout into a harsh word or a violent act. A seed of greed, if nurtured, will blossom into an act of selfishness or exploitation. But a seed of kindness, tended with care, will grow into a gentle word that heals. A seed of renunciation, cultivated with patience, will flower into a life of contentment and peace. Our mind is a garden. We are its sole gardener. The practice of right intention is the art of conscious gardening, of skillfully pulling the weeds of unwholesome thoughts and deliberately planting the seeds of wholesome ones. This inner gardening, this silent work we do within, does not remain silent for long. The quality of the seeds we plant in the soil of our mind will inevitably determine the nature of the first sprouts. that break through the surface into the world. These first sprouts, the first outward expression of our inner climate, are our words, and learning to use them wisely is the next step on our path. The seeds of our intention, planted in the quiet garden of the mind, do not lie dormant for long. Nurtured by the light of our attention, they inevitably sprout, breaking through the soil of our inner world and reaching into the world of others. The very first expression of our inner climate, the first sprout that reveals the quality of the seeds we have sown, is our speech. Our words are the bridge between our private thoughts and our public reality. They are carriers of immense energy, possessing the power to build kingdoms of trust and joy, or to scorch the earth, leaving behind wastelands of resentment and pain. There is an old story of a king who, wishing to test the wisdom of his royal chef, gave him a strange command. "Go to the market," the king said, "and bring me the finest, most valuable dish in all the world." The chef returned and presented the king with a platter. On it was a single cooked tongue. The king was intrigued. The next day, he summoned the chef again. "Today," he commanded, "I want you to bring me the absolute worst, most foul dish you can find." The chef went away and returned shortly after, again presenting a platter with a cooked tongue. The king, now perplexed, demanded an explanation. The chef bowed and said, "Your Majesty, with the tongue, one can speak words of truth, love, and encouragement that can inspire nations and heal the deepest wounds. There is nothing in the world better than this. But with the same tongue, one can speak lies, slander, and words of cruelty that can start wars and break the strongest hearts. There is nothing in the world worse than this." This simple story reveals a profound truth. The faculty of speech is a tool of incredible power, a double-edged sword that resides within each of us. The practice of right speech, or samavacha, is the third step on the Noble Eightfold Path. It is the art and science of learning to wield this power with wisdom, mindfulness, and compassion. It flows directly from the steps that precede it. If our view is clear and our intentions are wholesome, our speech will naturally begin to reflect that clarity and wholesomeness. Right speech is not about censorship or adopting a false, sweet tone. It is a deep practice of verbal integrity, a commitment to ensuring that the energy we release into the world through our words is a force for healing and connection, not for harm and division. The teachings offer us 4 beautiful guidelines for this practice, 4 gates through which our words should pass before they are released. The first gate is truth. Right speech is, first and foremost, true. This means abstaining from false speech, from deliberate lies and deception. But it goes deeper than that. It is a commitment to reality. It means avoiding subtle forms of untruth, like exaggeration to make a story more interesting, or convenient omissions to cast ourselves in a better light. It is the practice of speaking with honesty and integrity. However, truth must always be filtered through the gate of kindness. There are many things that may be true, but are not helpful or kind to say. Right speech is not a license for brutal honesty. It is the skillful art of conveying what is true in a way that is gentle, appropriate, and intended to be helpful. This gate asks us to pause and question, are these words a faithful reflection of reality as I know it? The second gate is kindness. This gate asks us to abstain from harsh speech. Harsh words are weapons. They can be overt, like insults, yelling, and name-calling, or they can be subtle, like sharp-edged sarcasm, ridicule, or a condescending tone. These words, even if they contain elements of truth, are like stones thrown at another person. They create wounds in the heart that can last a lifetime. To practice right speech is to make a commitment to gentleness. It is to consciously choose words that soothe rather than agitate, that support rather than belittle. This practice of kindness must also be extended to ourselves. Many of us, who would never speak harshly to a friend, maintain a constant stream of cruel and critical self-talk. Right speech means closing this gate to our own inner critic and learning to speak to ourselves with the same gentleness and forgiveness we would offer to someone we love. This gate asks, are these words gentle? Are they free from the intention to cause pain? The third gate is helpfulness. This gate requires us to abstain from divisive speech. Our words should be a force for harmony, not discord. Divisive speech includes slander, which is speaking untruths to damage another's reputation, but it also includes gossip and backbiting, the act of speaking about others behind their backs in a way that creates cliques, fuels resentment, and damages the fabric of trust. When we engage in this kind of talk, we are poisoning the well of our community. The practice of this third gate is to constantly check our motivation. Am I speaking to create understanding and bring people together? Or am I speaking to create drama, to reinforce my own ego by putting another down, or to foster a sense of us versus them? It is the commitment to being a peacemaker, to using our words to build bridges of understanding, not walls of separation. This gate asks the crucial question, will these words lead to greater harmony or greater division? The fourth and final gate is purposefulness. This gate asks us to abstain from idle speech. In our modern world, this is perhaps the most challenging gate of all. We are drowning in a sea of words, of endless chatter, pointless commentary, and verbal noise that fills space but communicates little of value. Idle speech is not just gossip, but any form of talk that is aimless and unproductive, that dissipates our energy and clutters the minds of both speaker and listener. This does not mean we must always be serious or that there is no place for light, joyful conversation, but it does encourage us to value our words and to value silence. It asks us to consider whether what we are about to say truly needs to be said. Is it useful? Is it interesting? Does it contribute something positive to the moment? Or is it just noise, a product of our own inner restlessness? This gate invites us to cultivate a relationship with silence and to speak with intention and purpose when we do choose to break it. This brings us to the other, often forgotten, side of right speech, the profound practices of noble silence and deep listening. Sometimes the most skillful speech is no speech at all. Noble silence is not an awkward, empty void. It is a rich, restorative space. By choosing to be silent, we give our own minds a chance to settle. We stop stirring the muddy water. In silence, we conserve our energy, and we begin to truly appreciate the power and weight of words. When we stop using them so cheaply, they become more precious. And when we cultivate this inner quiet, we develop the capacity for the most healing form of communication there is: deep listening. So often, we listen not to understand, but to reply. We are waiting for our turn to speak, to offer our opinion, to tell our own story. Deep listening is the practice of offering another person the rare and beautiful gift of our full, non-judgmental attention. We listen with our whole being, not just to the words, but to the feelings underneath them. We listen without needing to fix or to solve. In doing so, we create a safe space where the other person can truly be heard. This act of compassionate listening can be more healing than the wisest advice we could ever offer. Right speech, in its totality, is the practice of transforming our words from unconscious reactions into conscious creations. It is how the peace we cultivate inwardly through right view and right intention begins to manifest outwardly, creating ripples of harmony in our relationships and our world. As we begin to align our words with our deepest values, a natural and powerful integrity starts to emerge. A mind that intends no harm and a mouth that speaks no harm will naturally guide the body to act in harmless ways. The clarity and kindness we cultivate in our speech flows effortlessly into the integrity of our physical presence in the world. And this brings us to the next vital step on the path, the practice of right action. Our journey has taken us from the vastness of view to the focus of our intention, and through the gateway of our speech. We have seen how a clear mind and a kind heart begin to reshape our inner world and how we express it verbally. Now, this current of transformation flows into its most tangible and potent form, our physical actions. Right action, or sammakamanta, is the fourth step of the path, and it is where our practice becomes fully embodied. It is the art of making our deeds a seamless and authentic expression of our deepest wisdom and compassion. If right intention is the rudder, and right speech is the voice calling out our direction, right action is the movement of the ship itself, cutting a wake of peace through the waters of the world. Every action we take, no matter how small, is a cause that sets ripples in motion, affecting not only ourselves, but countless others in ways we may never fully know. Right action is the conscious practice of ensuring the ripples we create are ones of healing, trust, and benefit, rather than turmoil, harm, and regret. This practice is not a list of rigid, external commandments to be followed out of fear or blind obedience. It is a set of profound principles for living that naturally arise from a mind that understands interconnectedness and a heart that intends no harm. The teachings traditionally outline right action in three core precepts, three pillars of ethical conduct that provide a clear and compassionate framework for navigating our lives. The first pillar is the practice of abstaining from taking life. At its most basic level, this is a clear injunction against killing other human beings. But its spirit extends far beyond this. It is the cultivation of a deep and abiding reverence for all life, in all its forms. It is born from the right view that all beings, from the smallest insect to the largest whale, share the same fundamental desire we do, to live and to avoid suffering. To practice this principle in our modern world is to look at our relationship with the entire web of existence. It asks us to consider the impact of our choices on animal welfare, to question the sources of our food, and to move towards a diet and lifestyle that minimizes harm. It calls us to be stewards of our environment, to act in ways that protect our forests, purify our waters, and preserve the delicate balance of our planet for future generations. It is not just about refraining from the act of killing, it is the active practice of protecting, nurturing, and celebrating life wherever we find it. The second pillar is the practice of abstaining from taking what is not given. This is the principle of radical integrity and generosity. On the surface, it means not stealing, not taking the physical property of another, but its application runs much deeper. It means not taking credit for another's work in the office. It means not downloading copyrighted material without permission. It means not exploiting legal loopholes to gain an unfair advantage in business. It is the commitment to being scrupulously honest in all our dealings, big and small. It is about respecting the efforts, the time, and the resources of others as we would our own. The true practice of this principle, however, is not just about what we refrain from doing, it is about what we actively cultivate. The opposite of taking is giving. Right action In this context is the practice of generosity. It is giving freely of our time, our energy, our resources, and our kindness without expecting anything in return. It is moving through the world with an open hand rather than a grasping one, trusting in abundance rather than fearing scarcity. The third pillar is the practice of abstaining from sexual misconduct. This principle is often misunderstood as an outdated or puritanical rule, but at its heart, it is a profound practice of respect, responsibility, and care. It is about recognizing the deep vulnerability and powerful energy involved in human sexuality and vowing to act in ways that honor and protect that rather than exploit it. It means avoiding any sexual act that causes harm to oneself or to another, physically or emotionally. It is rooted in the unshakable foundations of honesty, mutual consent, and respect for the commitments and relationships of others. It is the intention not to use another person's body or heart for our own selfish gratification, but to approach intimacy with an awareness of the trust that is being offered. In a world where sexuality is often treated casually or transactionally, this principle calls us back to a place of deep respect for ourselves and our partners, ensuring that our intimate lives are an expression of genuine connection and care, not a source of confusion, betrayal, or suffering. To understand why these principles are so central to the path, we must understand the natural law that they are based upon. This is the law of karma. In the West, karma is often mistakenly seen as a system of cosmic reward and punishment, a scorecard kept by the universe. But its true meaning is much simpler and more scientific. Karma simply means action, and the law of karma is the universal law of cause and effect. It is best understood through the parable of the farmer. A farmer who plants apple seeds in his field is not surprised when apple trees grow. He would never plant thistle seeds and expect to harvest wheat. He understands that the harvest is a natural and predictable consequence of the seeds he has sown. Our minds are the field. Our actions are the seeds. Every time we perform an action born of anger or greed, we are planting a seed of anger or greed in our own mind. This seed doesn't just disappear. It leaves a subtle imprint, making it slightly easier to get angry or greedy the next time. We are conditioning our own mind with every action we take. Conversely, every time we perform an action of generosity or kindness, we are planting a seed of generosity or kindness. We are watering the roots of compassion within ourselves, making it our more natural, go-to response in the future. This understanding of karma is incredibly empowering. It means we are not the helpless victims of fate or the random whim of the universe. We are the farmers of our own existence. In every moment, we are planting the seeds that will determine the harvest of our future moments. The person we are today is the result of all the seeds we have planted in the past. The person we will become is being determined by the actions we are choosing to perform right now. We have the power, in this present moment, to stop planting the seeds of suffering and to start consciously cultivating the seeds of peace, clarity, and compassion. Every action, then, becomes an opportunity. Washing the dishes is not a chore. It is a chance to practice mindfulness and care. Driving in traffic is not an annoyance. It is a chance to practice patience. Our entire life becomes the ground of our practice. The goal is not to become a perfect person overnight, but to become a more conscious person, aware of the ripples our actions create, and choosing, again and again, to align them with our deepest intention for wholeness and healing. This profound practice of ethical action touches every corner of our personal lives. from how we treat our families to how we care for our own bodies. But for most of us, a vast portion of our time, our energy, and our action is dedicated to one specific area: our work. How we earn our living, how we participate in the machinery of the economy, is one of the most powerful and sustained actions we perform. Therefore, the path of healing and awakening naturally extends these powerful principles of right action into our professional lives. And this brings us to the crucial next step: the practical and challenging wisdom of right livelihood. The path of practice we have been exploring is not an abstract philosophy to be contemplated only in quiet moments. It is a living, breathing guide that touches every facet of our existence. We have seen how it reshapes our view, clarifies our intentions, purifies our speech, and guides our actions. Now, we bring this transformative practice into one of the most significant and often most challenging arenas of modern life: our work. For most of us, our livelihood consumes the largest portion of our waking hours. It is where our energy is spent, where our skills are tested, and where our values are either expressed or compromised. The fifth step of the path, right livelihood, or sama ajiva, is the crucial teaching on how to integrate our spiritual journey with our economic reality, ensuring that the way we sustain our lives is not a diversion from the path, but a central part of the path itself. Traditionally, right livelihood begins with the what, the nature of the profession itself. The core principle is, as always, non-harming. The teachings outline certain professions that are, by their very nature, incompatible with a path of peace and compassion. These include any work that involves dealing in weapons and instruments of death, any work that involves the trafficking and exploitation of human beings or animals, any work involved in the production of meat on a mass scale, and any work involved in the creation or selling of poisons and intoxicants that cloud the mind. In our complex modern world, these principles invite us to a much broader and more personal inquiry. We are encouraged to look with clear eyes at the work we do and the systems we participate in. Does my work contribute to the destruction of the environment? Does my company profit from exploiting the labor of others? Does the product I sell promote addiction, mindless consumerism, or social division? This can be a deeply uncomfortable inquiry. For many, the ability to choose a profession is a luxury they do not have. The demands of survival, of providing for a family, are paramount. The purpose of this teaching is not to induce guilt or to demand that everyone immediately quit their job if it falls short of a perfect ideal. That would be unrealistic and unkind. Rather, it is an invitation to cultivate an intention, to establish a direction. It is about being honest with ourselves, about the impact of our work, and if we find it to be harmful, to plant a seed of intention, to move, over time, toward work that is more aligned with our deepest values. It is about looking for opportunities, however small, to reduce harm and increase benefit within the role we already have. This what of right livelihood is the ethical compass that helps us navigate our long-term career choices, always orienting us toward compassion and away from causing harm. However, the most profound and universally accessible aspect of right livelihood is not about the what, but about the how. Even if we find ourselves in a job that is not our dream, or is part of a system we find problematic, the way we perform our work can become a powerful and transformative spiritual practice. This is where we shift from what we do to how we are. There is a beautiful Zen story about a master woodcarver, renowned throughout the land for creating bells that produced the most exquisitely resonant and calming tones. A visiting nobleman, awestruck by the beauty of the bells, asked the carver for the secret to his craft. The carver did not speak of his tools, his techniques, or the type of wood he used. Instead, he spoke of his state of mind. He said, "Before I even begin to search for the right wood, I first fast for several days to quiet my mind and purify my heart. I let go of all thoughts of what the reward might be. I let go of all thoughts of what rank or recognition this bell might bring me. I let go of all thoughts of praise, and I let go of all fear of criticism. My mind becomes utterly still. I become so absorbed that I forget I have a body. I forget I have hands. The distinction between me and the wood dissolves. I am left only with the deep, natural potential that is already present in the wood. Only then, when I am in this state of pure presence, do I pick up my tools and begin my work. I am not creating something. I am simply releasing the bell that was already waiting within the wood. This story reveals the profound secret of right livelihood. The quality of our outer work is always a direct reflection of our inner state. The true practice is to bring this quality of mindful presence to whatever task is before us. Can you be a mindful software engineer, bringing your full, calm attention to each line of code? Not out of frantic pressure, but with a quiet intention to create something useful and reliable. Can you be a compassionate nurse, seeing the patient not as a collection of symptoms, but as a whole person, deserving of your full, kind presence, even in the midst of a chaotic shift? Can you be a present teacher, letting go of the curriculum for a moment to truly listen to a student's question? Can you wash the dishes with the same care and attention as the woodcarver, feeling the warmth of the water, the texture of the plates, transforming a mundane chore into a moving meditation? When we approach our work in this way, it ceases to be a means to an ender, way to get a paycheck, so our real life can happen on the weekends. Our work becomes our real life. The office becomes our monastery. The daily challenges of deadlines, difficult colleagues, and frustrating tasks become our curriculum. A difficult conversation with a boss becomes an opportunity to practice right speech. A tedious project becomes a field for cultivating patience. A team project becomes a chance to practice generosity and cooperation. We stop focusing solely on the destination, the finished product, the promotion, the paycheck, and we fall in love with the process, with the journey itself. We infuse our work with a sense of dignity, integrity, and purpose, regardless of the title on our business card. The 5 steps of the path we have now explored: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood form a complete and beautiful whole. They constitute the great foundation of ethical conduct, known as sila, and the beginning of wisdom, known as panna. They guide us in how to see the world clearly and how to move through it with grace, integrity, and compassion. They create a stable and wholesome container for our lives, reducing the outer conflicts and inner agitations that so often disturb our peace. But to walk this path with unwavering strength, to climb the higher peaks of insight and freedom, we need more than just a clear map and an ethical code. We need to develop the engine of the mind itself. We must cultivate the inner energy, the sustained focus, and the penetrating clarity that are required to see through the deepest layers of delusion. Having established this firm foundation of ethical living, the path now takes a profound turn inward. We move from the outer expressions of our practice to the direct, inner cultivation of the mind. This next phase of the journey is dedicated to developing our spiritual force, and it begins with the vital and dynamic practice of right effort. We have now laid the great foundation of our path. Through the cultivation of right view, intention, speech, action, and livelihood, we have built a life of ethical integrity and growing wisdom. This is the solid ground of sila, of wholesome conduct, which calms the most flagrant agitations of our mind and reduces the friction in our outer world. It creates a safe and stable container for the deeper work to begin. Now, with this foundation established, the path takes a profound turn inward. We move from the realm of how we act in the world to the direct art and science of training the mind itself. This is the beginning of the cultivation of samadhi, or mental discipline, and the very first step in this inner work is the generation of energy. Not just any energy, but a specific kind of wise, balanced, and joyful energy. This is the sixth step of the path, known as samavayama, or right effort. In our modern culture, the word effort can be a loaded term. It often conjures images of striving, of struggle, of pushing against resistance with grit and willpower. It can trigger our deepest habits of ambition, self-criticism, and the exhausting belief that we are never doing enough. Because of this, it is essential to understand from the outset that right effort is not about trying harder in this conventional sense. It is not about gritting your teeth and forcing your mind into submission. Such an aggressive approach is born from a view of the mind as an enemy to be conquered. Right effort, however, is born from a view of the mind as a garden to be cultivated or an instrument to be tuned. It is an energy that is intelligent, patient, compassionate, and sustainable. It is the steady, enduring energy of a long-distance runner, not the desperate, frantic burst of a sprinter who collapses after 100 yards. It is the art of applying our energy wisely, so that it leads not to exhaustion, but to vitality and peace. The most beautiful and illuminating teaching on the nature of right effort is found in the story of a monk named Sona. Before becoming a monk, Sona had been born into a life of immense wealth and was an accomplished musician, a master of the lute. After hearing the Buddha's teachings, he was so inspired that he left his life of ease behind to dedicate himself fully to the path of liberation. But Sona brought the habits of his old life into his new one. He was an absolutist, an extremist. He thought that spiritual progress required extreme, forceful effort. He practiced walking meditation with such ferocious intensity that the soles of his feet cracked and bled, staining the monastery grounds with his blood. Yet, despite his heroic and painful efforts, his mind was no closer to peace. The more he strived, the more agitated and frustrated he became. He fell into despair, thinking to himself, "The path is not for me. I am giving everything I have, and yet I achieve nothing. It would be better to return to my old life of wealth and comfort, where at least I can enjoy myself." The Buddha, with his deep psychic insight, knew of Sona's struggle and paid him a visit. He did not scold Sona for his lack of progress or tell him to try even harder. Instead, knowing Sona's background as a musician, he asked him a series of simple, brilliant questions. "Sona," he began, "when you were a layman, you were skilled at playing the lute, were you not?" "Yes, Blessed One, that is so," Sona replied. The Buddha continued, "Tell me, Sona, what happens when the strings of your lute are tuned too tightly?" Sona answered, "Venerable Sir, if the strings are too tight, they will snap, and the instrument will produce a harsh, unpleasant sound." "And what happens," the Buddha asked, "if the strings are tuned too loosely?" "Sir, if the strings are too loose, they will not make a sound at all. The lute will be useless." Finally, the Buddha asked the crucial question, "But what happens, Sona, when the strings are tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose?" Sona replied, "When the strings are perfectly balanced, the lute produces a sound that is beautiful, resonant, and harmonious." The Buddha then looked at Sona with great kindness and delivered the teaching. So it is, Sona, with spiritual practice. If your effort is too intense, if your energy is stretched too tight, the mind becomes restless and agitated, and you cannot find peace. But if your effort is too slack, if your energy is too loose, the mind falls into laziness and dullness, and no progress can be made. The path to awakening, Sona, is found in the middle way. It is found by tuning the instrument of your body and mind to its perfect pitch, where the energy is sustained, balanced, and harmonious. Upon hearing this teaching, Sona understood his mistake. He relaxed his striving, found the middle way in his practice, and soon after, attained the inner peace he had been so desperately seeking. This story is our constant guide in the practice of right effort. It reminds us that the goal is balance, not burnout. But how do we apply this balanced energy? The teachings outline 4 specific areas where this wise effort is to be directed. We can think of these as the 4 great tasks of a master gardener tending the precious garden of the mind. The first task is to prevent the weeds from arising in the first place. This is the effort to prevent unwholesome states of mind, such as greed, anger, jealousy, and delusion from taking root. A wise gardener does not wait for the garden to be overrun with weeds and then begin the back-breaking work of pulling them. The wise gardener builds a good fence, protects the soil, and is vigilant about the seeds that blow in on the wind. For us, this means guarding the sense doors. It is the practice of being mindful of what we allow into our minds through our eyes, ears, and thoughts. It is the wise effort of choosing what we read, watch, and listen to. If we know that scrolling through angry social media feeds or watching violent news programs consistently plants seeds of anxiety and anger in our minds, right effort is the gentle but firm choice to limit our exposure. It is not about hiding from the world, but about recognizing what nourishes our peace and what poisons it, and skillfully choosing the former. This is the preventative medicine of the mind. The second task is to abandon the weeds that have already sprouted. No matter how vigilant we are, some weeds will always appear. Unwholesome thoughts will arise. A surge of anger, a pang of jealousy, a wave of craving. When these have already appeared in the mind, what does the wise gardener do? They do not get angry at the weed, as this just spreads more seeds of anger. They do not pour poison on it, which would harm the rest of the garden. And they certainly do not ignore it, allowing it to grow stronger and choke out the flowers. Instead, they skillfully and gently remove it. In our practice, this means meeting the unwholesome thought with wisdom. We can apply an antidote, such as meeting a thought of anger with a deliberate thought of loving kindness. We can investigate the thought, seeing its impermanent and selfless nature, watching it arise and pass away like a cloud. Or we can simply shift our attention, gently but firmly redirecting the mind back to a neutral anchor, like the breath. The effort here is not a violent struggle against the thought, but the skillful and patient act of letting it go. The third task is to actively plant the flowers. A beautiful garden is not just one that is free of weeds. It is one that is full of beautiful, nourishing plants. This is the joyful side of right effort. It is the deliberate work of arousing wholesome states of mind that have not yet arisen. This is the proactive cultivation of the good. We can intentionally bring to mind things we are grateful for, flooding the mind with the warm light of appreciation. We can sit down and actively practice loving-kindness meditation, sending wishes of well-being out into the world. We can read inspiring teachings, listen to uplifting music, or spend time in nature. We can reflect on the qualities of compassion, patience, and generosity, and set an intention to embody them. This is not about waiting for happiness to strike. It is about recognizing that we can actively create the conditions for wholesome states to arise and flourish within us. The fourth and final task is to maintain the flowers that have bloomed. Once a wholesome state has arisen, a moment of deep peace in meditation, a feeling of genuine connection with another, a sense of joy or clarity, the gardener's work is to nurture it. This doesn't mean grasping at it or trying to force it to stay, which would be like squeezing a flower to death. That would be the string tuned too tightly. Rather, it is the gentle effort of tending to it. We notice the conditions that allowed this peace or joy to arise, and we encourage those conditions. We savor the feeling. We allow it to permeate our being. We protect it from distraction. We appreciate the presence of the flower and give it the light and water it needs to continue to grow and blossom, strengthening its roots in the soil of our mind. This fourfold practice requires an energy that is profoundly different from the stressful striving we may be used to. The quality of right effort is one of patient, joyful, and compassionate persistence. It is the consistency of showing up to the garden each day, not with a sense of grim duty, but with a feeling of gentle curiosity and care. Some days we will have more energy for pulling weeds. Other days, we will have more energy for planting flowers. Some days, the lutestring of our energy will feel too tight, and we will feel agitated and restless. On those days, our practice is to gently loosen the string, to be kind to ourselves. Other days, the string will be too loose, and we will feel lazy, dull, and unmotivated. On those days, our practice is to gently tighten the string, to arouse a little more energy and interest. The practice of right effort itself includes the wisdom to know which is needed. It is a dynamic, intelligent process of self-regulation and attunement. When our energy is balanced in this way, when the instrument of our mind and body is perfectly tuned, it becomes capable of holding a clear, stable, and unwavering note. This sustained, joyful, and present moment awareness, born from the foundation of balanced effort, is the very heart of the meditative path. It is the celebrated and transformative art that we will explore next, the practice of right mindfulness. The path has now led us to its very heart. With the clear seeing of right view as our map, the gentle guidance of right intention as our compass, the integrity of ethical conduct as our sturdy vessel, and the wise energy of right effort as the wind in our sails, we are now ready to engage with the central, transformative practice of the entire journey. This is the seventh step, known as Samma Sati, or right mindfulness. If right effort is the act of tuning the instrument, right mindfulness is the act of playing the beautiful, clear note of the present moment over and over again. It is the practice that illuminates all the others, the foundational skill that allows us to see our minds, our hearts, and our world with breathtaking clarity. So what is mindfulness? The word has become common today, but its meaning is simple and profound. Mindfulness is the energy of being present. It is the practice of remembering to come back to the here and now. Most of our lives are lived in a state of forgetting. We are lost in thought, living in a dream world, constructed from memories of the past and anxieties or fantasies about the future. We eat our meals without tasting them, our minds already at the next appointment. We walk from one place to another without feeling our feet on the ground, our minds rehearsing a conversation we just had. We sit in a room with someone we love, but our attention is captured by the glowing screen in our hand. We are physically present, but our minds are elsewhere. We are absent from our own lives. Mindfulness is the simple, radical act of waking up from this dream of thought. It is the gentle return to the reality of the present moment, the only moment where life is ever actually happening. The practice of mindfulness begins with an anchor, a place to come home to when we notice our mind has wandered away. The most universal and reliable anchor is the breath. The breath is a miracle we carry with us everywhere. It is always in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future. It is the natural bridge between our inner world and the outer world, between mind and body. To practice mindfulness of breathing is not to think about the breath, but to simply feel the direct physical sensation of it. It is to rest your attention on the feeling of the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving them, or to place your attention on your abdomen, feeling its gentle rise with the in-breath and its gentle fall with the out-breath. The instruction is not to control the breath, but simply to feel it, to allow it to be as it is. Inevitably, your mind will wander, a thought will arise, a sound will distract you, a memory will pull you away. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of victory. That is a moment of mindfulness. And in that moment, without any scolding or judgment, you gently, kindly, and firmly guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath. This is the entire practice, returning again and again with infinite patience. Each return is like doing a single repetition at the gym, strengthening the muscle of attention and presence. From the anchor of the breath, we can expand our awareness to the entire body. Most of us live our lives as disembodied heads, completely disconnected from the physical reality of our own existence. Mindfulness is the practice of coming home to our body. You can do this right now by bringing your attention to the sensations in your feet. Feel the contact with the floor, the pressure, the temperature. You don't need to judge it or even name it. Just feel it. Then you can allow your awareness to slowly travel up through your legs, your torso, your arms, your neck, simply registering the raw data of physical sensation without a story attached. This is not about thinking about your body, but about inhabiting it. The body is always in the present moment. By grounding our awareness in its sensations, we pull our minds out of the spinning vortex of thought and anchor ourselves in the solid reality of the here and now. This is an incredibly powerful antidote to anxiety, which almost always lives in thoughts about the future. By returning to the body, we return to the safety of the present. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh powerfully illustrates how mindfulness is not just a formal practice for the meditation cushion, but a way of life that can transform every moment. He speaks of the simple act of washing the dishes. He teaches that while washing the dishes, we should only be washing the dishes. This means we are not rushing through them, thinking only of the cup of tea that awaits us afterward. Because if we are thinking only of the tea, we are not truly alive during the time we are washing the dishes. We are, as he says, sucked away by the future, incapable of living in the present. When we wash the dishes, we should be completely present with the act. We can feel the warmth of the water on our hands, see the bubbles on the soap, hear the sound of the plates clinking together. When we do this, the mundane task is no longer a chore. It becomes a sacred and fulfilling experience. Life is available in that moment. The same is true for drinking the tea. When we drink the tea, we should only be drinking the tea. We feel the warmth of the cup. We smell its fragrance. We taste its flavor. We are not thinking about yesterday or planning for tomorrow. We are fully alive with our cup of tea. This is the miracle of mindfulness. It reveals that life is not happening somewhere else, in some grand future event. Life is happening right here, in this simple, ordinary, and precious moment. The ultimate function of this practice, the reason it is so liberating, is that it creates space. The author, Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space, is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Mindfulness is the art of cultivating and expanding that sacred space. Without mindfulness, life is just a series of unconscious reactions. Someone insults you, stimulus, and you immediately lash out in anger, reaction. A feeling of anxiety arises, stimulus, and you immediately reach for your phone to distract yourself, reaction. We are like puppets, pulled by the invisible strings of our conditioning. With mindfulness, a space opens up. The insult comes, stimulus, but because you are present, you can watch the feeling of anger arise in your body. You can feel the heat, the tension. You can see the angry thoughts forming in your mind. And because you can see it all clearly, you are no longer possessed by it. In that space of seeing, you have a choice. You can still choose to lash out, but you can also choose to breathe, to remain silent, or to respond with a calm and compassionate word. You are no longer a puppet. You are free. This is also the secret to letting go. We cannot let go of a heavy rock if we do not first realize that our hand is clenched tightly around it. We cannot release ourselves from a prison if we don't even know we are locked inside. Mindfulness is the light of awareness that shines on our clenched fist. It shows us, without judgment, what we are clinging to: the old resentment, the fearful story about the future, the painful memory. By seeing our clinging clearly, by feeling its tension in our body and mind, the possibility of gently, willingly opening our hand arises. As we practice returning to the present moment again and again, supported by the balanced energy of right effort, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind, which was once like a scattered handful of leaves tossed in the wind, starts to gather. The scattered rays of our attention begin to converge into a single, steady beam of light. This state of being collected, unified, and unshakably present is the natural fruit of sustained mindfulness. It is the eighth and final step of the path, the profound state of right concentration. We have arrived at the final step of the Noble Eightfold Path, the culmination of our inner cultivation. The journey began by establishing a firm foundation of ethical living, of sila. Then, supported by this stability, we began to train the mind itself, generating the wise and balanced energy of right effort to power the gentle, constant practice of right mindfulness. We have learned to return, again and again, to the present moment, gathering the scattered fragments of our attention. Now, we explore the beautiful and profound fruit of this patient labor. What happens when the mind, which was once a chaotic storm of thought, is patiently gathered? What happens when the scattered rays of our awareness are brought to a single, unwavering point? This is the eighth and final step of the path, the deep and transformative state of samasamadhi, or right concentration. If right mindfulness is the continuous act of gathering the mind, right concentration is the state of the mind being fully gathered. If mindfulness is the process of allowing the mud to settle in the lake of the mind, concentration is the experience of the lake when the water has become perfectly still, utterly transparent, allowing us to see with pristine clarity to the very bottom. It is crucial to understand that right concentration is not something we achieve through force. Our conventional understanding of concentration often involves tension, a straining of the will, like a student forcing themselves to study for an exam. This is not samadhi. Such forceful effort is a product of the ego, and it only creates more agitation. Right concentration is not born from force, but from letting go. It is the natural and effortless state of a mind that is no longer being pulled and torn in 1,000 different directions. When we have patiently practiced letting go of distractions, letting go of thoughts of the past, worries about the future, sounds, sensations, the mind, free from these disturbances, naturally and happily settles upon its object of meditation, most often the breath. It is a state of unification, where the division between the observer and the observed begins to dissolve. Imagine your mind as a single candle flame. For most of us, for most of our lives, this candle is sitting in the middle of a field during a hurricane. The winds of desire, of anger, of fear, of memory, of planning are constantly blowing through us. The flame of our attention flickers wildly, erratically. Its light is weak, scattered, and unreliable. We can barely see what is right in front of us. The practice of ethical conduct, right speech, action, and livelihood is like building a house around this candle. The practice of right effort is the wise act of going around and gently closing the doors and windows of this house so the winds can no longer rush in. And the practice of right mindfulness is the gentle, continuous act of returning our gaze to the flame itself. When we do this consistently, the air inside the house becomes still. And what happens to a candle flame in a room with no wind? Of its own accord, it becomes steady. It stops flickering. It draws itself up into a single, bright, unwavering point of light. Its power is gathered, not scattered. It illuminates the entire room with a brilliant and stable clarity. This unwavering flame, this state of collected, unified, and luminous attention is right concentration. As the mind settles into this deep stillness, it begins to pass through natural landscapes of peace and joy. These are known as the jhanas, or states of meditative absorption. It is essential not to view these as levels to be conquered or goals to be achieved. To cling to them or to strive for them would be a subtle and powerful trap of the ego. They are simply signposts, natural fruits that arise when the mind is unburdened. They are what the mind does when it is finally allowed to come home and rest. In the first stage of this deepening stillness, the 5 great hindrances that normally cloud the mind's sensual desire, ill will, laziness, restlessness, and doubt have temporarily fallen away. The winds have ceased. In their place, powerful feelings of joy and bliss arise, born from this newfound seclusion from our usual mental turmoil. The mind is energized, happy, and focused. It is like a weary traveler who, after hacking through a dense and thorny jungle, finally emerges into a beautiful, sunlit meadow. The relief and joy are palpable. As the concentration deepens, we enter a second stage. Here, the active, thinking part of the mind that was still present in the first stage also falls away. The mind becomes even more unified and tranquil. The joy and bliss remain, but now they feel more internal, more profound, born not just from seclusion, but from the very quality of concentration itself. The mind is now generating its own profound peace, independent of outer circumstances. It is like discovering a cool, perfectly still lake in the center of that beautiful meadow. In the third stage, the more energetic and exciting quality of joy begins to fade, replaced by a deep, quiet, and penetrating bliss. A powerful sense of equanimity, arazeza, balanced, unshakable peacefulness. The mind is utterly content, resting in a state of profound well-being. It is like letting go of the shore and effortlessly floating in the center of that still, clear lake, held in a state of perfect balance and peace, without needing to do anything at all. Finally, in the fourth stage, even this subtle sense of bliss dissolves. All that remains is a vast, boundless equanimity and a one-pointed, unified mindfulness. There is no longer any experience of pleasure or pain, joy or sorrow. There is only a state of absolute stillness, purity, and radiant awareness. The water of the lake has become so perfectly clear and still that it is now invisible. It is as if you are resting in the vast, silent space itself, aware of everything and nothing, beyond all dualities, in a state of unshakable peace. One might ask, what is the purpose of cultivating such deep states of stillness? Is this not just a form of escapism, a retreat from the world and its problems? The answer is a definitive no. This deep stillness is not an escape from reality. It is the creation of the perfect laboratory for the investigation of reality. Right concentration is not the end of the path. It is the sharpening of the tool. A mind in a state of samadhi is the most powerful instrument in the universe for the discovery of truth. Imagine you have a magnifying glass and you want to use the power of the sun to start a fire. If your mind is scattered, it is like waving the magnifying glass all around. The sunlight, the potential for wisdom is present, but its energy is diffuse and weak. It has no power to ignite anything. But if you hold the magnifying glass perfectly still, if you bring it to a single, unmoving point, the scattered rays of the sun converge. They become a single, intensely hot point of light, a laser of such power that it can burn through any obstacle. This is the power of a concentrated mind. When the mind has been unified and stilled through the practice of right concentration, it gains this incredible power of penetration. With this tool, we can turn our attention to the deepest questions of existence. We can look at a single sensation, a single thought, a single emotion, with such focused clarity that its true nature is revealed. We no longer have to just believe in the teachings of impermanence and no-self. With a concentrated mind, we can see them directly for ourselves. We can witness, with microscopic precision, the arising and passing away of every momentary experience. We see that there is nothing solid to hold on to. We see that there is no separate self behind the experience. This direct seeing, this insight born from a still mind, is prajna, or liberating wisdom. This is what cuts the roots of our suffering. The stillness is not an empty state. It is a state pregnant with the potential for the deepest insight. And so, the Noble Eightfold Path comes full circle. We began with right view, an intellectual understanding of the map. We cultivated ethical conduct to create a stable life. We developed right effort, mindfulness, and concentration to sharpen the mind into a tool of incredible power. Now, the profound insights gained through this concentrated mind feed back and deepen our right view, transforming it from a conceptual map into a lived, unshakable reality. A deeper view refines our intentions, which in turn purifies our actions and speech. A more purified life makes it easier to find stillness. The path is revealed not as a straight line, but as a beautiful, self-reinforcing spiral of ever-deepening wisdom and compassion. We have now traversed the complete Noble Eightfold Path, from the initial clarity of view to the profound stillness of concentration. We have assembled a complete and powerful toolkit for the liberation of the mind. Our journey, however, does not end here. This is not the graduation. It is the empowerment. Now, armed with this powerful, unified, and brilliantly clear mind, this laser of concentrated awareness, we can turn its light upon the specific, heavy burdens we still carry from our past. We can begin the compassionate and surgical work of letting go, of healing our oldest wounds. Our first object of this focused inquiry is the great ghost that haunts so many of us. the tangled, heavy weight of the past. Having forged the powerful tool of a concentrated mind, we are now equipped to turn its clarifying light upon the heavy burdens we carry. We have moved through the entire Noble Eightfold Path, not as an academic exercise, but as the assembly of a complete toolkit for healing. Now, the real work begins, the compassionate application of these tools to the specific sources of our suffering. And for so many of us, the heaviest and most persistent burden is the one we drag behind us, the great, tangled, and unchangeable weight of the past. The past can feel like a ghost that walks beside us, whispering stories of regret and resentment into our ear with every step. It can be a film that plays on a relentless loop in the theater of our mind, forcing us to re-watch our greatest mistakes and deepest hurts. It is a backpack we fill with the stones of every, if only, every grievance, every failure, and then wonder why our journey feels so arduous. The first and most liberating insight on this part of the journey is this: the past does not exist. It is gone. It has no power, no substance. The only place the past has any reality at all is in our own mind, as a memory, a thought that is arising right now. The suffering we feel from the past is not happening in the past. It is happening in the present moment. Our clinging to the memory is the source of the pain. It is like carrying a corpse on our back. The corpse itself is lifeless, but the act of carrying it, of refusing to put it down, is what drains our energy, infects our present moment, and makes our future feel hopeless. The problem is not the unchangeable yesterday. The problem is the changeable habit of clinging to it today. There is a timeless Zen story that perfectly illuminates this truth. Two monks were on a long pilgrimage. One was a senior, wise monk, and the other, a young, earnest junior. Their journey brought them to a wide river with a swift current. On the riverbank stood a young woman, elegantly dressed, who was afraid to cross for fear of ruining her clothes and being swept away. She looked at the two monks with pleading eyes. The monks' vows were strict. They were forbidden from touching a woman. The young monk, conscious of his vows, stood at a distance, unsure what to do. The older monk, however, simply walked up to the woman and without a word, lifted her onto his shoulders. He strode through the powerful current, carrying her safely to the other side, and gently set her down. The woman bowed in gratitude and went on her way. The two monks continued their journey, but the younger monk was in turmoil. His mind was a storm of agitation and judgment. For hours, he walked in seething silence, replaying the scene over and over. How could my master do that? He thought. He is supposed to be a great teacher, yet he so brazenly broke one of our most sacred vows. He touched a woman. He carried her. The mental chatter was relentless, poisoning his every step. Finally, as evening approached, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Master, I must ask you, why did you do that back at the river? You know our vows forbid us from touching a woman. How could you break them so carelessly?" The old monk looked at his young companion, his expression one of genuine surprise. He replied softly, "I left that woman back at the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This question echoes through the halls of our own minds. We are all, in some way, the young monk. We carry people, we carry events, we carry words and hurts, long after they are over. The event itself might have lasted only a moment, but we extend its life indefinitely through the power of our own obsessive thought. We clutch these stories to our chest, refusing to let them go, and then wonder why we have no free hands to embrace the present. This act of carrying the past takes many forms. Sometimes we are carrying the heavy stone of regret. We are haunted by our own mistakes. We lie awake at night, replaying a foolish decision, a moment of weakness, an unkind word we spoke. The mental movie plays on and on, each viewing accompanied by a fresh wave of shame and self-recrimination. We become our own stern judge and unforgiving jailer, sentencing ourselves to a lifetime of reliving our failures. This is a profound act of unkindness toward ourselves, a refusal to accept our own imperfect humanity. At other times, we are carrying the bitter stone of resentment. Here, we are replaying the mistakes of others. We obsess over how we were wronged, betrayed, or treated unfairly. We keep a detailed ledger of every hurt, and we spend our precious mental energy polishing the stories of our victimhood. We believe that by holding on to our anger, we are somehow punishing the other person. But as the saying goes, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. The bitterness does not touch them. It corrodes our own heart, turning our inner world into a toxic and unhappy place. And sometimes, in a more subtle way, we are carrying the shimmering, beautiful stone of nostalgia. We are trapped not by a painful past, but by a perfect one. We cling to the memory of a past success, a time when we were happier, younger, or more in love. The good old days become a golden cage. We compare every present experience to this idealized past, and the present always falls short. By clinging to a memory of sunlight, we fail to notice the simple beauty of the moonlight that is shining on us right now. In all these cases, regret, resentment, or nostalgia, the mechanism is the same. The mind clings to a memory, a thought form, and we mistake that thought for a living reality, allowing it to dictate our emotional state in the present. So how do we put the woman down? How do we release our grip on these heavy stones? The practice begins with mindfulness. With the clear, non-judgmental awareness we have been cultivating, we can start to notice when we are carrying something. We can feel the familiar clenching in the stomach that accompanies regret. We can notice the heat and tension in the chest that signals resentment. We can recognize the sweet, sad ache of nostalgia. In the past, we were possessed by these states. Now, with mindfulness, we can see them. We can say to ourselves, there is the story of that old argument again. There is the feeling of resentment arising. The moment we can see it as a story, as a feeling arising in the present, we are no longer completely lost in it. A space has been created, and in that space, we can gently guide our attention back to the anchor of the present moment, the feeling of our breath, the sensation of our feet on the floor. We may have to do this 100 times a day. That is the practice. The definitive act of putting the burden down is the practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts. It is not about condoning a harmful action. It is not about saying what happened was okay, and it is not something we do for the other person. Forgiveness is a radical act of self-healing. It is the conscious and courageous decision to cancel the debt of resentment that we have been carrying. It is looking at the poison in our own hands and choosing to put it down for our own sake. It is declaring, I will no longer allow the events of the past to cause me suffering in the present. I release you from the prison of my anger, not for your sake, but for mine. The same is true for forgiving ourselves. It is the act of accepting our own flawed humanity, of acknowledging that we made a mistake, and of giving ourselves the compassionate gift of a fresh start. It is the ultimate expression of leaving the woman at the river, of freeing ourselves to continue our journey with a lighter heart and open hands. As we learn to release our grip on the past An incredible sense of space and lightness begins to permeate our lives. We are no longer defined by our old stories. We are free to be who we are, right now. But the mind, so accustomed to its habit of time travel, has another favorite destination. When it is not dwelling in the ruins of the past, it is often racing ahead, building anxious fantasies in the mists of the future. Freeing ourselves from the ghost of yesterday is only half the battle. We must now turn our clear, concentrated attention to its twin, the phantom of tomorrow, and learn how to release our grip on the endless anxieties about what is to come. Having turned the gentle light of our awareness upon the ghosts of the past, we have begun to learn the art of putting down our old burdens. We have seen that the past has no power over us, except for the power we give it by clinging to it in the present moment. But the restless, time-traveling mind has another favorite destination, a place where it spends at least as much of its energy. When it is not replaying the old films of yesterday, it is endlessly screening previews for the catastrophes of tomorrow. This is the realm of anxiety, the phantom of the future. It is the low hum of dread that underlies so much of modern life, the knot in the stomach, the racing heart, the mind spinning with an endless cascade of what-if scenarios. If regret is the suffering born of a past that is already gone, anxiety is the suffering born of a future that has not yet arrived, and very likely never will. Anxiety is the friction between our deep human desire for certainty and a universe that is fundamentally uncertain. And the engine that generates this friction is the storytelling mind. Our mind is a brilliant but terrible fortune teller, one who specializes in predicting disaster. It takes a single, neutral fact about the future and weaves it into a terrifying epic. Let us say you have an important presentation to give at work next week. This is a simple fact, but watch what the anxious mind, the monkey mind, does with it. It leaps immediately to the worst possibilities. What if I forget what to say? What if my technology fails? What if they ask a question I can't answer? This is just the opening scene. From there, the story escalates. If the presentation goes badly, my boss will think I'm incompetent. My colleagues will lose respect for me. I won't get that promotion. And it continues, spinning out of control. If I don't get the promotion, I won't be able to afford that new house. I might even get fired. If I get fired, how will I pay my rent? I'll end up homeless. In the space of a few minutes, a simple presentation next Tuesday has become a full-blown narrative of professional ruin and personal destitution. And here is the crucial part. Your body believes the story. In the safety of your own home, a week before the event, your heart pounds, your palms sweat, your breath becomes shallow. You are experiencing the real, physical stress of a catastrophe that is happening only in your imagination. You are suffering profoundly in the present moment because of a fiction about the future. There is a simple story that captures the tragic absurdity of this state. A man is walking through a beautiful park on a bright, sunny day. The birds are singing, the flowers are in bloom, and a gentle breeze is blowing. But the man is not enjoying any of it. He is hunched over, struggling to hold up a large, heavy black umbrella over his head. A friend sees him and approaches, confused. "What are you doing?" the friend asks. "The sky is perfectly blue. There isn't a cloud in sight. Why are you carrying that heavy umbrella?" The man looks back, his face etched with worry. "I know," he says, "but it might rain later." That man is us. The beautiful, sunny day is the present moment, the only reality we ever have. The heavy umbrella is our anxiety. It is the collection of all our worries, our what-ifs, our catastrophic predictions that we insist on carrying with us. even when there is no evidence of a storm. The great tragedy of the story is that the man's fear of a potential, imaginary storm in the future completely ruins the actual, real beauty of the sunny day he is in. He cannot feel the warmth of the sun on his skin because he is hiding under the shadow of his own fear. This is precisely what anxiety does. It makes us sacrifice the lived reality of the now for an imagined disaster in the future. We are so busy preparing for a life that might happen, we forget to live the life that is happening. So what is the antidote? How do we learn to put down the umbrella and enjoy the sunshine? The path does not offer a magic pill to eliminate uncertainty. Instead, it offers us the tools to change our relationship with it. The ultimate antidote to anxiety about the future is a wholehearted return to the present moment. When you feel the storm of anxious thoughts beginning to gather, when the what-ifs begin to chatter, that is your signal to come home. Come home to the anchor of your breath. Feel the simple, real sensation of air entering and leaving your body. Come home to the feeling of your feet firmly planted on the ground. Come home to the sounds in the room right now. And in this moment of presence, ask yourself the most powerful question you can ask an anxious mind. Right now, in this exact moment, is there a problem? Not in 5 minutes, not tomorrow, not next week, right here, right now. In almost every case, the answer will be no. Right now, you are breathing. Right now, you are safe. The catastrophe is not here. It exists only as a thought. By repeatedly returning to the reality of the present, you cut the fuel line to the engine of anxiety. You see the thoughts for what they are, just thoughts, passing clouds in the sky of your awareness, not prophetic truths. This practice leads to a deeper insight. The root of anxiety is our desperate need to control the uncontrollable. We want a guarantee. We want to know for certain that things will be okay, that we will not fail, that we will not be hurt. But life offers no such guarantees. The future is, by its very nature, unknown and unknowable. Right practice is the courageous act of letting go of this need for control. It is the wisdom of accepting uncertainty as a fundamental part of life. Just like gravity, you don't fight gravity. You learn to work with it. You don't fight uncertainty. You learn to find your balance within it. This letting go of control does not lead to passivity. On the contrary, it frees up an immense amount of energy. All the energy we were wasting on worrying can now be channeled into wise action in the present. This reveals a profound paradox. The best way to prepare for the future is to forget about the future and to be fully present now. A well-lived, mindful present moment is the most fertile ground from which a good future can grow. If you are anxious about that presentation, spending 10 hours worrying about it is not only useless, it is counterproductive. It drains your energy and clouds your mind. But spending 1 hour fully present, mindfully researching, practicing, and preparing is infinitely more effective. We learn to replace the useless activity of worry with the useful activity of wise, present moment action. We take care of the causes in the present, and we learn to trust that the effects in the future will take care of themselves. We do our part, and we let go of the rest. As we become more skilled at releasing our grip on the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow, we find ourselves spending more and more time in the only place where life ever truly unfolds, the present moment. A profound peace and simplicity begins to emerge, but we may soon discover that even when we are grounded in the here and now, we can still be burdened. We can be trapped not by the dimension of time, but by the dimension of our social world. We carry the heavy weight of what other people think, constantly monitoring their approval and fearing their disapproval. This subtle, invisible cage, built from our deep-seated need for external validation, is the next great burden we must learn to see and to release. Having learned to gently release our grip on the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow, we find ourselves increasingly inhabiting the only place where life truly exists, the present moment. A newfound sense of peace becomes available to us, a quiet space in the here and now. Yet, even as we arrive in this present moment, we may discover another, more subtle form of bondage. We may find we are living inside an invisible cage, a prison whose bars are not made of iron, but of the opinions of other people. This is the prison of our own deep-seated need for approval. It is the constant, nagging hunger for praise and the sharp, visceral fear of blame. It is the invisible force that compels us to change how we speak, how we act, and even what we believe, all in the desperate hope of being liked, accepted, and validated by the world around us. We become a puppet, and the strings are held by everyone we meet. Our inner peace rises and falls not on the basis of our own integrity, but on the shifting, unpredictable whims of public opinion. This outsourcing of our self-worth is a profound source of anxiety and suffering, and learning to free ourselves from this invisible cage is one of the most liberating steps on the path to inner freedom. The way this prison operates is described in the teachings as being tossed about by the 8 worldly winds. Imagine yourself in a small boat on a great ocean. These 8 winds are the inevitable weather patterns of social life. They blow constantly, and if your boat has no anchor and no deep keel, you will be thrown about mercilessly, your inner state in a constant state of turmoil. The first 2 winds, and the most powerful, are praise and blame. Praise feels like a warm, gentle breeze, a beautiful sunny day. When someone praises our work, our appearance, or our character, we feel a sense of elation. We puff up. We feel validated and seen. We become addicted to this feeling, and we begin to unconsciously tailor our actions to get more of it. Blame, on the other hand, is a cold, biting wind that chills us to the bone. When we are criticized, rejected, or blamed, we feel a sharp sting of pain, a sense of shame, and deflation. We will do almost anything to avoid this feeling, and so we start to play it safe, to hide our true selves, terrified of saying or doing anything that might attract this icy blast. Our life becomes a frantic dance, moving toward the warmth of praise and fleeing from the cold of blame. The next 2 winds are gain and loss. This refers to the acquisition and loss of material possessions, status, or reputation. When we get a promotion, a raise, or a new car, the wind of gain fills our sails, and we feel a rush of pleasure and security. We believe we are moving forward in life. But when we lose a job, suffer a financial setback, or our reputation is damaged, the wind of loss blows hard against us, and we feel a sense of devastation and failure. Our happiness is tethered to these external conditions, rising and falling with the unpredictable tides of fortune. The third pair of winds is success and failure. These are the powerful labels our culture bestows upon us. We are conditioned to desperately seek success, the right career, the perfect family, the admired lifestyle, and to feel a deep sense of shame around failure. We internalize these arbitrary definitions and measure our own worth against them. The fear of being seen as a failure can be so paralyzing that it prevents us from taking risks, from following our passions, or from even starting something new, trapping us in a life of quiet mediocrity. And the final 2 winds are pleasure and pain. This refers to the constant stream of pleasant and unpleasant experiences that flow through our senses and our hearts. We are constantly grasping for pleasant feelings, trying to hold on to them, and constantly pushing away painful or uncomfortable feelings, trying to get rid of them. This endless cycle of chasing pleasure and fleeing from pain is a life of constant tension, a battle we can never win, for as we know, all feelings are impermanent. The goal of the spiritual path is not to stop these 8 winds from blowing. They are a natural and unavoidable part of human life. You will be praised and you will be blamed. You will experience gain and you will experience loss. The goal is to build a boat with a deep and heavy keel, the keel of wisdom and inner stability, so that when these winds blow they will, your vessel remain steady and on course. The practice is to develop an inner center of gravity that is not dependent on the ever-changing weather of the outer world. There is no more powerful illustration of this inner stability than a famous encounter in the life of the Buddha. A man who was deeply opposed to the Buddha's teachings came to see him one day. He stood before the Buddha and began to shout, launching a long and vicious tirade of insults. He called the Buddha a fraud, a fool, a charlatan who was misleading the people. He used the harshest language he could summon. Throughout this verbal assault, the Buddha sat in perfect stillness. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not show the slightest flicker of anger, fear, or agitation. He simply listened, with a calm, patient, and compassionate presence. His silence was more powerful and more unnerving to the man than any counter-argument could ever be. Eventually, the man ran out of insults. He exhausted himself and stood panting, confused and bewildered by the Buddha's unshakable equanimity. "Why do you not respond?" the man demanded. "Do my words not affect you? Are you not angered by my insults?" The Buddha then looked at the man, his eyes full of kindness, and asked him a simple question. "My friend," he said, "if you prepare a gift for someone, and you go to their house and offer it to them, but that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man thought for a moment and replied, "Well, if they do not accept it, then the gift would still belong to me." The Buddha smiled gently. "Exactly," he said, "and so it is today. You have come and offered me the gift of your anger, your insults, and your negativity. I do not accept this gift." This story is a profound teaching on inner sovereignty. It reveals that we have a choice. Another person's opinion, their praise, or their blame is a gift that they offer to us. It is their thought, their feeling, their energy. It belongs to them. It only becomes our suffering if we choose to accept it, to take it from them, to let it into our own house, our own heart. If someone offers you a gift of poison, you are not obligated to drink it. In the same way, when someone offers you the poison of their judgment or their anger, you do not have to take it in. This is not about being passive or weak. It is about being so internally secure that you are no longer permeable to the negativity of others. Your peace is not in their hands. It is in yours. How then do we cultivate this inner validation, this unshakable self-worth that is not dependent on the winds of the world? The practice begins, as always, with mindfulness. We start by simply noticing the mechanism in ourselves. When someone offers us praise, we mindfully watch the pleasant feeling that arises. We notice the subtle grasping, the desire for more. We see the ego preening itself. When someone criticizes us, we mindfully watch the sting of pain, the heat of anger, the contraction of defensiveness. We don't judge ourselves for these reactions. We simply see them. Ah, this is the feeling of being blamed. This is what the fear of disapproval feels like. This clear seeing creates a space between the external event and our internal reaction. In that space lies our freedom. The next step is to consciously shift our source of validation from the outside to the inside. Instead of looking to others to tell us we are good, we learn to look at our own intentions and actions. We anchor our self-worth in our own ethical integrity, our own adherence to the path. At the end of the day, the crucial question is not, how many people liked me today, but did I live in alignment with my values today? Was I kind? Was I honest? Did I practice patience? When our self-worth is based on our own wholesome conduct, the applause of the world becomes a pleasant but non-essential bonus, and the criticism of the world becomes mere noise. We learn to offer ourselves a quiet well done for our efforts to be a good person, and this inner praise is worth more than the applause of 1,000 strangers. As we practice this, the bars of the invisible cage begin to dissolve. We are no longer a puppet dancing for the approval of others. We find the courage to be authentic, to speak our truth with kindness, to take creative and personal risks, to live a life that is a genuine expression of who we are, because we are no longer terrified of disapproval. We find a deep and abiding peace that cannot be given to us and cannot be taken away. This freedom from the opinions of others, this release from the prison of the ego's needs, leads us to an even deeper inquiry. We see that our desperate clinging to praise and blame was rooted in the fierce belief in a solid, separate self that needed to be protected and promoted. As this frantic need begins to fade, our very understanding of that self and of reality itself begins to radically shift and open. In this new and profound stillness, we start to perceive a truth that underlies everything. We begin to see that everything we once thought was solid, separate, and real is, in a much deeper sense, empty of any independent existence. This profound, liberating, and often misunderstood insight is the discovery of emptiness, or shunyata. It is the key that dissolves the very idea of a cage and a self to be caged entirely. As we find our footing in the present moment, releasing our grip on the past and future, and as the fierce winds of praise and blame cease to throw us into turmoil, a great silence begins to descend. In this silence, the desperate lifelong project of defending and promoting the ego starts to feel unnecessary. The walls of the fortress we have built around our sense of self begin to look transparent. We have journeyed far, and now we arrive at the very peak of the mountain of view, an insight so profound that it has the power to dissolve the very ground of our suffering. This is the wisdom of shunyata, or emptiness. The word emptiness can be frightening. It conjures images of a cold, black void, of meaninglessness, of a nihilistic abyss where nothing matters. It is absolutely crucial to understand from the very beginning that this is not what the teaching of emptiness means. In fact, it is the exact opposite. Shunyata is not an absence, it is a fullness. It is not a statement that things do not exist. It is a statement about how they exist. The wisdom of emptiness is the most liberating, joyful, and connecting insight on the entire path. It is the key that unlocks the final door of the prison of the self, revealing not a void, but the boundless, radiant, and interconnected dance of all of existence. To understand emptiness, let us look deeply at something simple, like a single flower. What is a flower? We see its petals, its stem, its color, but that is only a surface-level perception. The wisdom of emptiness invites us to look with the eyes of insight. When we do, we see that the flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. First, we see the sunshine. Without the sun's light and warmth, the flower could not exist. So, the sun is inside the flower. Then, we see a cloud. The cloud is not in the sky, it is also in the flower, because without the cloud becoming the rain, the flower would wither and die. Looking deeper, we see the soil, full of minerals and nutrients. The soil is in the flower. We see the farmer who planted the seed, the parents of the farmer, the food they ate that gave them the strength to work. We see the entire history of the cosmos, the iron in our blood and in the soil, forged in the heart of a dying star, billions of years ago. When we look deeply enough, we see that the entire universe is present in this single flower. The flower cannot exist by itself as a separate, independent entity. Its entire existence is dependent on everything else. In this sense, the flower is empty of a separate self. This is the meaning of emptiness. It is not that the flower is not there. It is that the flower is there, but it is full of everything else. It is the cosmos manifesting in the form of a flower for a little while. And so it is with us. We too are empty of a separate self. We are made of sunlight, of air, of water, of the food we have eaten. We are made of our parents and our ancestors. We are made of the ideas, the language, and the culture we have absorbed. We are with everything and everyone. To see this is to be cured of the sickness of separation. Another way to understand emptiness is through the lens of potential. There is a famous Zen story of a learned scholar who came to visit a great master to inquire about the nature of Zen. The scholar began to speak, endlessly showing off his own vast intellectual knowledge, quoting scriptures and philosophical texts. The Zen master listened patiently and then began to serve tea. He filled the scholar's cup, and then he kept pouring. The tea overflowed the cup and spilled onto the saucer, and then onto the table. The scholar, horrified, shouted, "Stop! What are you doing? The cup is full. No more will go in." The master stopped pouring, looked at the scholar, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story reveals a second facet of emptiness. A cup is only useful because it is empty. Its emptiness is its function, its nature, its potential. If the cup were already full of solid porcelain, it would be useless as a cup. It could not receive anything. In the same way, a mind that is full of rigid beliefs, fixed opinions, and a solid sense of its own importance has no room for new wisdom, no space for life to unfold. Emptiness, in this sense, is not a lack. It is a boundless openness. It is the pure potential that exists before we carve up reality with our labels and concepts. We look at a piece of wood, and our mind says chair or table, but before these labels, the wood is simply wood, full of the potential to become anything. To realize emptiness is to realize this state of pure potential, this freedom from being a fixed thing. When we are empty of a fixed identity, we are free to be anything, to respond to each new moment with freshness and creativity, rather than with the heavy baggage of who we think we are. The realization of emptiness is the ultimate liberation because it dismantles the very structure of our suffering. All our suffering is rooted in grasping and aversion, and both of these are predicated on a belief in solid, separate things. We grasp at a solid self. We grasp at solid pleasure. We grasp at other solid people, and we try to push away a solid pain. But if, through deep insight, we see that none of these things have any solid, separate existence, what is there left to grasp? What is there left to push away? The entire game of desire and fear dissolves. When we truly understand emptiness, the rigid dualities that we have used to navigate the world begin to soften and collapse. The hard line between self and other is seen to be an illusion. How can I harm you without harming myself if we are both made of the same non-us elements? The distinction between success and failure becomes meaningless, as both are just temporary labels applied to a ceaseless flow. Even the ultimate duality, that of life and death, is transformed. If the I that I identify with is not a solid entity, but a temporary pattern, like a wave on the ocean, then what is there to be extinguished? The wave does not die when it returns to the ocean. It simply realizes its true, vast nature. The fear of death is the fear of the separate self being annihilated. When we see that there is no separate self to begin with, this deep, existential fear loses its power. This is the ultimate freedom spoken of in the great wisdom teachings. It is not a freedom to do whatever we want. It is a freedom from the very mechanism of selfish craving and fear. When we realize that there is nothing solid to hold on to, the frantic, lifelong struggle of the ego to protect and enhance itself can finally come to an end. The clenched fist of the mind can finally relax and open. In this openness, there is no more tension, no more struggle. There is only the graceful, intelligent, and effortless dance of life, unfolding moment by moment. Far from being a cold or nihilistic concept, the realization of emptiness is the very foundation of true warmth and connection. When we look at the flower and see the cloud within it, we feel an intimacy with the cloud. When we look at another person and we see the same sunshine, the same air, the same earth that is within us, when we see their same fundamental desire for happiness and their same fear of pain, the illusion of our separation from them vanishes. We see that their joy is not separate from our joy, and their suffering is not separate from our suffering. This direct, visceral seeing of our interconnectedness, this profound insight of emptiness, naturally and spontaneously gives birth to its dynamic and heartfelt expression in the world. This expression is not a thought or a theory. It is the warm, active, and boundless energy of true compassion. When we stand on the high peak of insight and see into the truth of emptiness, the experience is not one of cold, distant abstraction. It is an insight that melts the frozen borders of the self and floods the heart with an undeniable warmth. The clear, cool light of wisdom, or prajna, is one wing of the great bird of awakening. The other wing, without which we cannot fly, is the warm, beating heart of karuna, or compassion. They are inseparable. Wisdom reveals our profound interconnectedness, and compassion is the heart's natural response to that revelation. It is the spontaneous and active expression of a mind that has truly let go of I and mine. It is important to understand that the compassion spoken of in the Buddhist path is radically different from pity. Pity is born from a sense of separation. We look down from our own safe position and see another's misfortune, thinking, "Oh, that poor person. I am so glad I am not them." Pity reinforces the ego and the illusion of separation. Compassion, or karuna, is born from the direct experience of non-separation. It is the heart's trembling recognition of a shared existence. When we see another person suffering, a compassionate heart does not say, "That is your pain." It feels, "That pain is present in our shared world. Your suffering is related to my suffering." It is the visceral understanding that we are all in this together, all subject to the same fundamental laws of life, all hoping for happiness, all fearing pain. It is empathy in its purest and most expansive form. This profound compassion is not a sentimental emotion we have to force ourselves to feel. It is the logical and inevitable fruit of the insights we have been cultivating. When we truly understand the teaching of emptiness, that nothing has a separate, independent self. The hard line between me and you dissolves. When we look at another person, we no longer see a stranger, but a unique manifestation of the same interconnected web of life that we are. We see that they, too, are composed of sunshine, of air, of the efforts of their ancestors, of all the joys and sorrows that have shaped them. When they are in pain, a part of the web we both belong to is in pain. The desire to help, to soothe, to offer comfort becomes as natural and reflexive as pulling our own hand away from a hot stove. When we understand the truth of impermanence, it softens our judgments and opens our heart. We realize that the person who is acting out in anger today is not a solid, permanently angry person. They are a flow of changing conditions. Perhaps they are in pain, or afraid, or were treated harshly themselves just moments before. This view allows us to respond to their behavior with patience and understanding, rather than with reactive anger, because we know that their state, like all states, will pass. We see the person behind the temporary storm of their emotion, and when we understand the universal truth of dukkha, that all unenlightened beings are subject to suffering and dissatisfaction, it creates a profound sense of fellowship. The wealthy CEO in his boardroom and the lonely old woman in her small apartment are both subject to sickness, loss, and death. They both carry their own invisible burdens of fear and regret. This shared vulnerability, this common humanity, becomes the fertile ground from which a universal, unbiased compassion can grow. It is a compassion that does not depend on whether we like someone or not, or whether they deserve it or not. It is offered simply because they are a fellow living being. In the rich iconography of Mahayana Buddhism, this ideal of active, wise compassion is embodied in the magnificent figure of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is a being who, on the verge of final nirvana, chooses to remain in the world out of a deep vow to help all other beings find freedom. Avalokiteshvara is often depicted with 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in the palm of each hand there is an open eye. This imagery is a profound metaphor for the nature of true compassion. The 1,000 eyes represent wisdom, prajna. It is the ability to see clearly, to perceive the suffering of the world in all its many forms, in all directions, without illusion. The 1,000 hands represent compassionate action, karuna. They are the countless skillful means one can use to reach out, to help, to heal, and to alleviate that suffering. The eyes of wisdom see where help is needed, and the hands of compassion act upon that seeing. The crucial teaching of this image is that the two are inseparable. Hands without eyes are blind. This is compassion without wisdom, a sentimental, do-gooder energy that can often cause more harm than good, because it does not understand the true nature of the problem. Eyes without hands are sterile. This is wisdom without compassione, cold intellectual understanding that remains aloof and disconnected from the suffering of the world. To walk the path of the Bodhisattva, to embody the spirit of Avalokiteshvara, is to cultivate both. It is to have a mind that sees with perfect clarity and a heart that responds with boundless love. And it is important to note, the 1,000 hands are not for grasping, for holding on, for accumulating. They are all open hands. Hands of giving, of releasing, of serving, of letting go. True compassion is the ultimate act of selflessness. This state of boundless love is not just a lofty ideal for enlightened beings. It is a quality that can be actively cultivated by each of us. The primary method for this is the practice of metta, or loving-kindness meditation. This is the art of intentionally cultivating a warm, friendly, and benevolent attitude towards ourselves and all of life. The practice is a systematic workout for the heart, We begin with ourselves, for we cannot share with others what we do not have for ourselves. We silently repeat phrases like, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease." We offer ourselves the same unconditional kindness we would offer a beloved child. Once we have established a foundation of self-compassion, we expand the circle of our goodwill. We bring to mind a dear friend or loved one and extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy, may you be healthy. Then we stretch our heart further by bringing to mind a neutral person, someone we see often but have no strong feelings about. We offer them the same wishes. The most transformative part of the practice is to then bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict. Here, we do our best to see their suffering, to recognize their own desire for happiness, and to extend our wishes of loving kindness even to them. Finally, we radiate this feeling outward, in all directions, to all beings everywhere, without exception. This practice, repeated over time, softens the armor around our hearts and makes compassion our more natural and spontaneous response to the world. This boundless compassion, this open heart, born from a clear mind, is the beautiful, fragrant fruit of our entire journey of letting go. It is the ultimate expression of a mind that has released its obsession with the separate self and has realized its intimate connection with all that is. But we do not live on a meditation cushion or in the quiet solitude of a monastery. We live in a world of traffic jams, demanding jobs, political turmoil, and constant digital noise. The great challenge and the true test of our practice is to learn how to carry this precious and sometimes tender heart back into the chaos of our daily lives. How do we maintain this inner stillness and warmth when surrounded by the clamor of the modern world? This is the essential art of finding silence in the noise, the next stage of our practice. We have journeyed to the high peaks of wisdom, discovering the profound truths of emptiness and interconnectedness. And from those peaks, the warm, clear light of compassion has begun to shine in our hearts. We have cultivated an inner world of clarity and kindness. But we do not live on a remote mountain peak. We live in the bustling, noisy, and often chaotic valley of modern life. We have this beautiful, tender, and open heart. And now we must learn how to carry it through a world of traffic jams, deadlines, social media arguments, and constant demands for our attention. The great question that arises is, how do we protect this inner peace? How do we keep the candle flame of our awareness from being extinguished by the hurricane of daily life? The answer is a profound shift in perspective. Peace is not found by escaping the noise. True peace is found by discovering the silence that is already present within the noise. There is a powerful story of a king who offered a great prize for the painting that would best capture the essence of peace. Artists from all over the kingdom submitted their work. The galleries were filled with serene and beautiful images. There were paintings of perfectly still, mirror-like lakes, reflecting gentle mountains. There were paintings of quiet, sun-dappled forests, where no wind stirred the leaves. There were paintings of soft, pastel sunsets over a calm and empty sea. The king looked at them all, but he was not satisfied. Finally, he came to the last two paintings. One was a beautiful, placid lake, the very picture of tranquility. The other was a shocking contrast. It depicted a great, thundering waterfall, crashing down over jagged rocks with immense, violent force. The sky was dark, with storm clouds, and lightning split the air. It seemed to be the very opposite of peace. The entire court was certain the king would choose the painting of the lake, but to their astonishment, he chose the painting of the waterfall. The chief minister, bewildered, asked the king for his reasoning. "Your Majesty," he said, "how can this violent and tumultuous scene represent peace?" The king beckoned him closer. "Look again," he said softly. He pointed to a small detail in the painting that everyone had missed. There, behind the deafening curtain of the raging waterfall, nestled safely in a small crevice in the rock, was a tiny mother bird, sitting calmly on her nest. In the very heart of the chaos, surrounded by the thunderous roar, she was the picture of perfect, undisturbed peace, tending to her young. "This," said the king, "is true peace. It is not a place where there is no noise, no trouble, no hard work. Peace is to be in the midst of all those things, and still be calm in your heart. This is the great challenge and the great opportunity of our practice. It is not about creating a perfect, silent, problem-free life. Such a life does not exist. The practice is about learning to build that nest behind the waterfall. It is about discovering that sanctuary of stillness that is always available to us, no matter what is raging in our outer world, or even in our own minds. This is the art of integrating our practice into the fabric of our day, of weaving mindfulness into every moment, so that our entire life becomes our meditation. Let us walk through a typical day and discover the countless hidden opportunities for this practice. The moment of waking is our first opportunity. For many of us, the first act of the day is to reach for our phone, instantly flooding the mind with the anxieties, demands, and agitations of the world. But what if, instead, we made our first act a conscious one? Before moving, before thinking, simply take 5 full breaths. Feel the body lying in the bed. Feel the simple, miraculous fact of being alive for another day. With this simple act, you have started your day from a place of presence, not panic. As you make your morning coffee or tea, instead of mentally running through your to-do list, practice a 5-minute tea ceremony. Feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. See the steam rising. Smell the aroma. Taste each sip as if it were the first and only cup of tea you will ever drink. You have created a small sanctuary of peace before the day has even truly begun. Then comes the daily commute, which for many is a source of immense stress. We can reframe this. Our car, the bus, or the train can become our mobile monastery. If you are driving, feel the sensation of your hands on the steering wheel. Feel your body in the driver's seat. Instead of filling your mind with angry talk radio, perhaps listen to a calming piece of music or an inspiring podcast. When you stop at a red light, instead of feeling impatient, use it as a bell of mindfulness. Take 1 conscious breath. Relax your shoulders. It is a 1-minute retreat. If you are on public transport, you can close your eyes and follow your breath, or you can practice loving kindness, silently sending wishes of peace and well-being to the tired, stressed-out faces of your fellow passengers. You have transformed a period of stress into a period of practice. At work, the opportunities are endless. The moments walking from your car to your office or down the hall to a meeting can become opportunities for walking meditation. Instead of being lost in thought, bring your attention to the physical sensation of your feet, making contact with the ground, step after step. You can set a silent alarm on your phone or computer for 3 times during the day. When it chimes, this is your signal to practice the mindful pause. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, simply stop. Stop thinking, stop typing, stop talking. Take 3 deep, conscious breaths. Feel your body. Reconnect with your intention. This simple act, which takes less than a minute, is a powerful pattern interrupt that can break the hypnotic trance of stress and bring you back to the present moment. When it's time for lunch, resist the urge to eat at your desk while continuing to work. Take 15 minutes. Sit away from your screen. Put your phone down. Look at your food. Smell it. Chew each bite slowly and deliberately. Actually taste what you are eating. You are not just refueling your body, you are nourishing your mind with presence. Even the most challenging parts of our day can become our greatest teachers. We learn to transform our triggers into bells of mindfulness. When you are stuck in a long line at the grocery store and you feel the familiar heat of impatience rising, that is the bell. Instead of fuming, you can use that moment to practice. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice the feeling of impatience in your body. Breathe into it with kindness. The line is no longer your enemy. It is your teacher of patience. When a difficult colleague says something critical and you feel the sting of defensiveness, that is the bell. Before you react, take one breath. Create that sacred space. Notice the feeling, and then choose your response with wisdom and kindness. A slow internet connection is no longer just a frustration. It becomes a reminder to practice letting go of control. A traffic jam is no longer a personal affront. It is an unexpected invitation to sit in stillness. When we adopt this attitude, the world stops being a series of obstacles to our peace and starts being the very curriculum designed to help us find it. In the evening, as the day winds down, the practice continues. Before you walk into your home after work, you can create a transition ritual. Sit in your car for just 2 minutes in silence. Consciously let go of the stresses and concerns of the workday so that you can enter your home with a clear mind and an open heart, ready to be present for your family. As you engage in household chores like cooking or cleaning, you can apply the principle of washing the dishes to wash the dishes. You can bring your full attention to the physical sensations, doing each task with a quiet dignity and care. And as you prepare for sleep, instead of numbing your mind with endless scrolling on a screen, you can create a sanctuary for rest. Turn off all electronics 30 minutes before bed. You might do a few gentle stretches, feeling the sensations in your body. You could practice a simple gratitude reflection, mentally listing 3 or 4 things from the day for which you are thankful. You are consciously planting wholesome seeds in the garden of your mind just before you sleep. This weaving of mindfulness into the small, ordinary moments of our life is the essence of integrated practice. We begin to realize that we do not need a special cushion, a quiet room, or an hour of free time to meditate. Our breath is our portable meditation cushion. Our body is our portable temple. We can access the sanctuary of peace, that quiet nest behind the waterfall, in any moment, simply by remembering to return our awareness to the here and now. The artificial distinction between formal practice and daily life begins to dissolve. Life itself becomes the meditation. This continuous, moment-to-moment practice of returning, of noticing, of letting go, brings us to the final, unifying understanding of our entire journey. We see that letting go is not a singular, dramatic event, a decision we make once and are done with it. Rather, we discover that it is a continuous, moment-to-moment art, a way of being that is as natural and as vital as our own breath. It is the final realization of the path in action. Having woven the threads of our practice into the rich and complex fabric of our daily lives, we arrive at a final, unifying insight. We come to see that letting go is not a singular, monumental act of will. It is not a dramatic event where we, once and for all, cast our burdens into a fire and walk away, healed forever. Life is more fluid than that, and the habits of the mind are more persistent. The path reveals to us something far more subtle, more sustainable, and more profound. We discover that letting go is not an act at all, but an art. It is a continuous, moment-to-moment practice that we cultivate, a gentle rhythm we learn to live by. And the teacher of this art, the constant, reliable beat that guides our practice, is our very own breath. The breath is the ultimate model of letting go. It is the living embodiment of the wisdom of impermanence, flowing through us in every moment of our lives. Observe it now. There is the in-breath, the gentle receiving of life, of oxygen, of the present moment. It is an act of nourishment, of acceptance, of saying yes to what is. And then, without any struggle, without any need to hold on, there is the out-breath. The body naturally, effortlessly, releases what is no longer needed. It lets go. In this simple, biological process is the entire teaching. Our suffering arises from a single, misguided effort, the attempt to hold on to the in-breath. We grasp at a pleasant experience, a moment of joy, a feeling of security, and we try to hold it, to stop it from changing. We try to continuously inhale, but life does not work that way. To hold the in-breath is to create tension, pressure, and eventually suffocation. Peace, vitality, and life itself are only found in the willingness to exhale, to release, to let go. With this understanding, every breath becomes an opportunity for practice. With every inhalation, we can mindfully welcome the present moment. And with every exhalation, we can consciously release. As you breathe out, you can let go of the physical tension in your shoulders. You can release a worried thought about the future. You can let go of the lingering residue of an old resentment. You can release the need to be right, the fear of being wrong. You don't need to force anything away. You simply ride the wave of the out-breath, allowing it to carry the unnecessary burdens away with it. And then there is the precious pause at the end of the exhalation, that moment of stillness and emptiness before the next breath arises. In this quiet space, there is no past, no future, no story. There is only peace, the silent potential from which all life emerges. To trust this cycle, to live in harmony with this rhythm of receiving and releasing, is to find peace not as a distant goal, but as the very nature of our being. We learn that life breathes us, if we only allow it to. There is a great and ancient wisdom in how a tree embodies this practice. In the spring and summer, the tree receives the light of the sun and the water from the earth, and it grows, lush and green. But as autumn approaches, it does not cling to its vibrant leaves, to the glory of its summer self. It begins the slow, graceful, and magnificent process of letting go. It releases its leaves, not with a sense of sadness or failure, but as an act of profound intelligence and wisdom. The tree is not dying. It is preparing. It is conserving its life force for the quiet, dormant period of winter. It is letting go of what is no longer needed to create the necessary conditions for new life, for the new buds that will burst forth in the spring. This surrender is not a defeat. It is a display of strength, an alignment with the deep rhythms of reality. We too are like this tree. Our lives have seasons. There are times for growth and accumulation, and there are times for release and surrender. Letting go of an old identity, an old relationship, a cherished belief, or a painful grievance is not a sign that we have failed. It is a sign that we are wise. We are conserving our precious spiritual and psychological energy. We are making space. An autumn tree, bare against a winter sky, is not empty. in a negative sense. It is full of a stark and quiet beauty, full of the potent promise of spring. In the same way, a mind that has let go of its clutter is not a void. It is open, spacious, and full of a peaceful potential we could not imagine when it was crowded with the dead leaves of the past. And so, we see that the entire path we have traveled has been a training in this art of release. We began by seeing the weight of the rocks we carried, the attachments that caused our suffering. We journeyed through the great eightfold path, using right view to see the nature of things, right intention to orient our hearts, right speech, action, and livelihood to harmonize our lives with that vision, and right effort, mindfulness, and concentration to train our minds to be still and clear. We then turned this trained awareness upon our burdens, learning to let go of the past, the future, the demands of the ego, and the illusion of our own separation. We come to realize that this path has no final destination, no graduation day where we receive a certificate of enlightenment. The path is the destination. The practice is its own reward. The joy is not found in finally arriving at a state of perfect, permanent release, but in the tender, moment-to-moment process of the release itself. We learn to be patient with ourselves, to honor the beauty of imperfection and the courage of gradual progress. We are not trying to become perfect saints. We are simply learning to be more fully human, more fully present, and more fully alive. Letting go is not about loss. It is about creating space. It is about emptying our hands of the pebbles of the past so that we may receive the gifts of the present. It is the continuous, life-giving exhale that makes the next precious inhale possible. This gentle, continuous art of letting go, moment by moment, breath by breath, is the living heart of the path. And as we learn to live in this way, we are no longer seeking peace as a distant goal, but discovering it as the very nature of our own open, unobstructed being. We arrive, not at an end, but at a new and spacious beginning, ready to summarize this profound journey and to fully embrace the freedom it offers. We began our journey together in a cluttered room, with a person drowning in the silent noise of a life filled with everything but peace. We saw a mind pulled in 1,000 directions, a heart burdened by the weight of possessions, regrets, and fears. Let us return to that room for a final moment. The room may still be the same. The world outside, with all its demands and distractions, has not changed, but the person sitting within it is transformed. There is a stillness in their posture, a quiet clarity in their eyes. The phone may light up, but it is no longer a summons to anxiety, merely a light in a quiet room. The objects around them are no longer a source of attachment or identity, but simply things. The frantic internal monologue has softened into a gentle hum. Where there was once a feeling of being trapped, there is now a sense of space, of openness, of a quiet, unshakable center. Nothing external was fixed. Everything internal was healed. This is the fruit of the journey we have taken together. We began by acknowledging the weight we carry, the subtle dissatisfaction of a life spent grasping. We looked with courage into the restless, storytelling nature of our own minds, the source of our anxieties. We dared to investigate the great truths of existence, discovering the universal flow of impermanence and the liberating illusion of a solid, separate self. And in that understanding, we found a path, a practical and compassionate guide to navigating our lives. We learned to see the world with clear eyes, to align our intentions with our hearts, and to let our speech and our actions become expressions of that inner integrity. We learned to find our peace not by escaping the storm, but by building a quiet nest in the very heart of it. We learned, moment by moment, breath by breath, the gentle, continuous art of letting go. And so we arrive at the simple, profound, and unshakable core of this timeless wisdom. Peace is not something you acquire. It is something you uncover. It is not a destination you must travel to, nor a prize you must win. It is your original nature. It is the vast, silent, clear blue sky that is always present, even when it is temporarily obscured by the clouds of your thinking. Healing, therefore, is not a process of adding anything to yourself. It is the courageous process of subtraction, of gently removing the layers of conditioning, the false beliefs, and the heavy attachments that have hidden the peace that was already there. It is the understanding that true freedom is found not in getting more, but in needing less. The key to this peace, the key to your own freedom, is not held by any teacher or found in any ancient book. It is already in your hands. It has been with you all along. It does not demand a grand gesture or a dramatic life change. It asks only for your gentle, patient, and sincere attention. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the journey to inner peace begins with a single conscious breath. Right here, right now, breathe in and know the simple miracle of being alive. Breathe out and gently, with a quiet smile, let go.